BraveStarr, 1987 to 1989, a space western explored. Howdy, and welcome back to our channel for another thrilling ride of yet another rather underrated animated show, BraveStarr. The story follows superpowered Marshal BraveStarr from planet New Texas, who along with his partners and friends fights a host of villains, with Tex Hex being a constant pain in the ass. The series covers only one season, but with a fair number of 65 episodes, there's a lot of story to tell. It was produced by Lou Scheimer and was in syndication, making it the last animated series by Filmation and Group W Productions. Also, a little sneak peek. It features a time-traveling Sherlock Holmes to make things a little more interesting than usual. The story is set in the 23rd century, so we can call it a dystopian western. In this video, I will explore the complete lore of the series. And if you appreciate the efforts, please do like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. The disappearance of 3030. Somewhere in space, in a faraway planetary system with 3 suns, lies the desert-like planet of New Texas. In one of those sandy plains waits Marshal BraveStarr and his partner, the Equestroid 3030. BraveStarr wants to catch the dingoes on Turbo Mule, and 3030 intends to use his cannon-like gun, Sarah Jane. BraveStarr prohibits 3030 from using the weapon. As the dingoes approach, BraveStarr summons the speed of the puma to chase after them. And hey, Flash and Quicksilver have some competition in New Texas. Anyway, 3030 ignores BraveStarr's advice and uses Sarah Jane, but the shot misses, and the landslide of rocks stops BraveStarr from his pursuit. He blames 3030 and calls him trigger-happy, which doesn't sit well with the Equestroid. BraveStarr proceeds to catch the criminals alone and brings them back to Fort Kirium for Deputy Fuzz to lock them up. Meanwhile, 3030 decides to go back home, and when BraveStarr notices that his buddy is missing, it might be a little too late. BraveStarr asks Judge J.B. McBride if Tex Hex might have kidnapped him, but JB assumes 3030 might have gone back to his homeland. At Hall of Equestroids, 3030 recalls how it's where he met his former best friend, BraveStarr, who came to steal Sarah Jane, when a voice calls to 3030 and asks him to return to the past. BraveStarr arrives just before 3030 leaves, and the Equestroid comments that he is going back to where he was appreciated. Nevertheless, a clueless BraveStarr approaches the shaman for some enlightenment and learns about 3030's time travel. The shaman transports BraveStarr and himself back to the past, where they encounter the Great Equus. The Lord of the Equestroids tells BraveStarr that 3030 doesn't remember him, and BraveStarr must show valor and strength to win back his friend. The shaman leaves BraveStarr to his mission, and BraveStarr returns to the moment he met 3030. Just like the past, the two friends battle, and oh yes, the strength of the bear helps BraveStarr to win the battle. As the walls of the hall crumble and are about to crush 3030, BraveStarr saves him. 3030 remembers his old friend, and also that he is upset. But with BraveStarr apologizing and agreeing to disagree on the Sarah Jane thing, it's all water under the bridge. Shaman transports them back to the present, and now more serious matters await. Fallen Idol. BraveStarr reminisces about his mentor, Jingle Morgan, when Deputy Fuzz finds that Morgan is a wanted criminal for a murder. At present, Jingles Morgan enters a bar and remembers the humiliating incident of when he lost a fight with Imperial Guard Trooper Salaman Bliss at Antares 3 in a friendly match. As everyone at the arena, including the Galactic Marshal cadets, erupted in laughter, Morgan shot Salaman Bliss. Now a fugitive, Jingles Morgan leaves for the Hexagon to join Tex Hex's gang. However, Tex Hex has a condition kill Marshal BraveStarr. Jingles Morgan remembers his former student, but remains overly confident that he can do the task. Meanwhile, it rests up to BraveStarr to catch the criminal, but it breaks his heart. More so, as Deputy Fuzz continues to idolize BraveStarr the same way. However, BraveStarr commands that he must do it alone and asks 3030 and Deputy Fuzz not to follow. But they are not the ones to listen and dig underground to follow BraveStarr secretly, who, however, has summoned the speed of Puma to run towards Hexagon. As BraveStarr approaches his hide, Tex Hex alerts his defense system, which aims to tire out the hero before Jingles Morgan can fight him. BraveStarr casually destroys the defenses and finally confronts his old mentor and hero. Jingles Morgan remembers the time BraveStarr and everyone else at the academy threw him a surprise birthday party, but his humiliation and pride of never losing take over Morgan, and he aims his gun to shoot BraveStarr. However, BraveStarr is faster and he disarms Morgan. On the other hand, Tex Hex and Thunderstick try to kill both BraveStarr and Morgan, but Deputy Fuzz and 3030 emerge from underground, blasting the villains with Sarah Jane. Jingles is taken away and comments that he never wanted to be idolized, leaving BraveStarr heartbroken once again.
Be ready. Now, strength of the bear!
The taking of Thistle Down, 1, 2, 3. The Planetary Union has sent the Cygnian ambassador to New Texas, and he is generally pleased with the way Mayor Derringer is running things, but he mistakes Marshal BraveStarr as redundant and wants to have him removed. Meanwhile, Tex Hex has assembled a team of villains to attack the space freighter called Thistle Down 123. As Tex Hex and team approach, BraveStarr warns Deputy Fuzz to put Fort Kirium into lockdown. It's impressive how the fort moves into a battle-ready mode and initiates the defenses, but it's too late, as Tex Hex not only hijacks Thistle Down 123, but also takes the ambassador and the mayor hostage. The ambassador is currently running out of air and needs to replenish it, while the mayor assures him that BraveStarr will handle the situation. But it's easier said than done, as the space freighter is docked in the air, and neither BraveStarr nor any of his partners can fly up to the ship. Tex Hex further teases BraveStarr and threatens that with the ambassador captured, he has the Planetary Union in his fist. BraveStarr approaches Shaman for help, who helps 3030 to fly and get on the freighter. BraveStarr also throws a line to Judge JB and helps her ascend. While 3030 and JB go after the rest of the villains and free the hostages, BraveStarr goes to confront Tex Hex. The mayor shows off some skills and gets free of his restraints, while the ambassador's air is depleting. However, the mayor gets paralyzed by Vipra, but not before he takes down Sandstorm. On the other hand, Sandstorm has also weakened JB, so it rests up to the ambassador to disable the power supply. Thunderstick is overpowered by 3030 and his Sarah Jane, while the ambassador does as he was told and then collapses. Tex Hex throws down BraveStarr through a trapdoor and attempts to fly away with the freighter, but BraveStarr latches onto it and prevents the ship from leaving and throws out Tex Hex from it. BraveStarr helps the ambassador breathe, and he realizes the true worth of the marshal. Promising to recommend both the mayor and the marshal, the Cygnian ambassador leaves and would probably not venture into New Texas for years. The adventure of BraveStarr is only beginning. You would probably love watching BraveStarr confronting Tex Hex. We will get a look into Tex's past, while BraveStarr will also have to deal with memory loss, save the Prairie people, and stop the spread of drugs in this part of the galaxy.
Phew.
Scuzz and Fuzz. Deputy Fuzz, an alien mole man of a community called the Prairie People, takes Marshal BraveStarr underground to their settlement and shows him the large Kirium reserve, which is protected by a force field. Chief Tussle of the Prairie People further explains that if anyone is trying to forcibly break the force field, it will cause a big explosion, destroying the settlement. However, you can never chill with Tex Hex and his carrion bunch around, so BraveStarr scans the surrounding areas with 3030, while Fuzz seeks more time to stay underground and meet his girlfriend, Wazella. BraveStarr's concern proves right as Fuzz's cousin, Outlaw Scuzz, divulges the secret of the Kirium reserve to Tex Hex and promises to find the secret tunnel that leads there. As Scuzz digs underground, Tex Hex decides to bring in the rest of his gang to invade the land. Scuzz and Fuzz knock into each other, and Fuzz is able to tie up Scuzz with his own hand. They stumble upon the Kirium reserve, and as Scuzz tries to get rid of the force field, he triggers the alarm. Fuzz drags Scuzz to find the master switch and stop the explosion. Meanwhile, BraveStarr and 3030 fight Tex Hex and the Carrion Bunch, but it opens up the secret tunnel and all follow. BraveStarr and 3030 find the force field in its precarious situation and ask all the Prairie People to evacuate. On the other hand, Scuzz's attempt to escape from Fuzz got him buried under rubble, and to Scuzz's astonishment, Fuzz saves him. Fuzz locates the master switch, but accidentally falls from an underground cliff, and the rope tears. Scuzz contemplates escaping, but saves Fuzz as an act of gratefulness. However, this doesn't mean he has a change of heart. Elsewhere, BraveStarr confronts Tex Hex and his Carrion Bunch, but then plays a psychological game as he informs Tex Hex that the Kirium is going to blow. BraveStarr and 3030 pretend to leave, further instigating the Carrion Bunch to abandon Tex Hex. As the Kirium starts to shake up, even Tex Hex makes a run for it, while BraveStarr connects with Deputy Fuzz and tracks him down. BraveStarr jumps up to the rock and turns off the master switch, saving the Prairie settlement. The Prairie people thank BraveStarr and Fuzz, who finally unite with his girlfriend, Wuzella. A day in the life of a New Texas judge. It's only 6 a.m. in New Texas, and Judge Twangley of the Galactic Court of Justice arrives to monitor and report on the performance of Judge J.B. McBride. Twangley is a little creature with wings, and her overzealousness is quickly revealed as she disparages JB for minute matters. It serves her right when Marshal BraveStarr writes Twangley a ticket for illegal parking in the middle of the street. The situation is turned worse when a Kirium miner, Billy Bob, approaches JB for her assistance in handling a dispute with the Sawtooth ranchers at Hydrogen Valley. At JB's behest, the miner also asks BraveStarr to investigate the issue, but Twangley's constant poking interrupts JB's operation. Although BraveStarr, JB and 3030 stop the feuding parties, it is revealed that JB had actually allowed both groups to work in the same field. Twangley rejoices at the prospect of JB screwing up, as she can report JB and take her position. However, she's just kidding herself. Meanwhile, JB argues that since the miners can work underground and the Sawtooth can feed above the ground, it shouldn't be a problem. However, it's not that simple, as the cattle feed on the photo clover flowers, which close up when the miners use their axes for mining. JB is put to the test as she dives into the paperwork to find a suitable solution to the problem that will appease both groups. Twangley notes this and threatens BraveStarr that she will ensure that JB, BraveStarr and 3030 are replaced quickly. Tired of her continuous snarky comments, 3030 stuffs Twangley in a bag. BraveStarr calls 3030 to join the fun, while miner Billy Bob and Nature Alf decide that they must stop the dingoes to protect their Kirium and Sawtooths. As they work together, JB is impressed. After they have defeated the dingoes, the miners and ranchers are willing to let go of the land, but JB notes that the photo clover flowers close up at night. She serves the verdict that ranchers will let their Sawtooths graze during the day, while miners will work at night. Unfortunately for Twangley, this means she must return home empty-handed. However, it appears she has left the planet with her ride and without paying the parking ticket. Rampage. 3030 has indulged in a multi-step hair care routine when, somewhere in the desert, dingoes start shooting at a young boy, and Marshal BraveStarr rushes to save the boy. The boy introduces himself as Ultron, and he seeks the help of the Marshal as Sandstorm has been repeatedly attacking his mining village on the other side of the mountain. As the Marshal joins Ultron in finding his home, BraveStarr tries to contact 3030 for some assistance. However, the Equestroid is still immersed in his elaborate hair care and misses out on the call. Ultron and BraveStarr take Ultron's sand slider, but are also attacked by pom-pom spiders. BraveStarr tries to contact 3030 again, but the radio signal doesn't reach him beyond the mountains. The duo manages to escape them and arrive at the village, but there is no one there, and BraveStarr uses his Optivisor to detect a heat source, if any. He finds a little girl who turns out to be Ultron's sister, Thoren. The girl describes watching the giant sand monster abducting the villagers in a large barge, and BraveStarr realizes that Thoren is talking about Sandstorm. Meanwhile, 3030 finally notices it's been long, and BraveStarr hasn't returned. He finds the dingoes in a dingy part of the town, and asks them about BraveStarr's whereabouts. However, the dingo gets scared and blurts out that BraveStarr is at Hexagon. Assuming that BraveStarr got kidnapped by Tex Hex, 3030 appears at Tex Hex's lair and starts rampaging. 3030 is named after a variety of Winchester rifle cartridges, which, if you ask me, go well with his nature and appearance. As for the Marshal, he uses the eyes of the hawk to locate Sandstorm, carrying the villagers as a gift for Tex Hex to use them as slaves. BraveStarr fights the sand crab sent by Sandstorm, and Sandstorm calls Tex Hex for help. However, Tex Hex is busy defending his lair against a mad 3030, and so that things don't look good for Sandstorm, who is responsible for the fiasco. Tex Hex leaves, and instead of fighting BraveStarr, he sends Sandstorm flying for not following his plans. BraveStarr is clearly astounded, especially since Tex Hex just leaves, giving him an off day. The villagers reunite with their families, and BraveStarr returns to 3030, stopping his rampage. BraveStarr and 3030 offer to clean up the Hexagon, but Tex Hex says he already has the help, just as Sandstorm drops into the place. To walk a mile. The episode starts off with BraveStarr consulting with Shaman and discussing the importance of walking in someone's shoes to learn about them and their struggles. He then leaves for a mission with 3030. On his way, he encounters Lucas Conway and his son Mark, who are harassed by a dingo called Goldtooth and outlaw Scuzz. Mark is upset with his father's peaceful and inactive attitude as he avoids confrontation. He rattled when Lucas refused to bring any charges against the outlaws. BraveStarr recognizes Conway and tells 3030 that Lucas Conway used to be a galactic marshal in Rigel 7, but has left his post after an accident and has become a prospector. The crooks return to their master, not Tex Hex, but a two-headed cyborg bird called Two-Face. Interestingly, for writing the script, the staff had anointed the buzzard-like part as Two-Face #1 and the robotic one as Two-Face #2. Anyway, when Two-Face learns of Lucas Conway, they immediately get interested as Lucas is the one who had put them in jail. On his order, Goldtooth and outlaw Scuzz kidnap Mark and send a message directly to Pop Conway. Lucas approaches BraveStarr for his help and explains that once, due to his hastiness, he had accidentally shot his own deputy, crippling him for life, and so it's basically PTSD from carrying a gun. As BraveStarr, Lucas and 3030 approach Two-Face's hideout, the villain releases lava, but it's no match for our heroes with the strengths of animals. Scuzz gets away as things don't tilt their way. The heroes overcome every obstacle placed by Two-Face, and BraveStarr uses Ears of the Wolf to locate Mark. Lucas finds Mark and saves him, but the robo-shooter appears and Mark aims to shoot him. Mark hurts his legs instead, and Lucas finally jumps in, using the gun on the robo-shooter, while rocks crumble and fall on Lucas's leg. Mark finally realizes his father is brave, while BraveStarr uses his powers to escape the crumbling tower with Lucas and Mark. However, Lucas will recover, and the father-son reconciliation takes place at the end of the episode. Big 30 and Little Wimble. As J.B. McBride and her journalist father venture into the far desert to get some pictures of the Howler and his Leaper riders, BraveStarr and 3030 follow. The McBrides get chased by Howler and his gangs, but help not only comes from the law enforcers but also the Prairie people living in the area. Howler leaves, promising to get his revenge, while BraveStarr and 3030 are blamed by the Forgotten Tribe chief for making Howler aware of their territory. BraveStarr promises to capture Howler for good, while a little prairie kid called Wimble chooses 3030 as his temporary father, as per custom. BraveStarr has misgivings about 3030 being a good father, as he teaches Wimble how to and how not to handle Sarah Jane. The friend almost gets into an argument again. However, when BraveStarr approaches Shaman, he reminds BraveStarr of his argument with a friend called Dana when they were children and asks BraveStarr not to assume things. BraveStarr returns to 3030 and finds that he has enrolled Wimble in Miss Jenny's school. Apparently 3030's look is based on rock legend David Lee Roth. As 3030 and BraveStarr leave to catch Howler, Miss Jenny decides to take the children to the Prairie land so that Wimble can introduce them to his culture. The other children don't treat Wimble well, but Miss Jenny assures him that they will come to accept him with time. Unfortunately, Barker and Goldtooth listen to everything and sabotage Miss Jenny's bust jet so that it breaks down in Howler's territory. Miss Jenny contacts BraveStarr and informs him of the predicament. As 30 goes on his own to find the kids, BraveStarr returns to Fort Kirium to get his hoverglide from Deputy Fuzz. They notice Barker and Goldtooth trying to rob Billy Bob and threaten to reveal Howler's plan. Meanwhile, Wimble proves to be a great asset in leading Miss Jenny and the kids through the desert, although Brian continues to make occasional quips. When the Leap Riders appear, Wimble is able to take down some of them, and soon 3030 appears to help them. BraveStarr and Fuzz also arrive in time, as Howler and his dingoes are all captured. The episode ends with Wimble being appreciated by his classmates, and 3030 by his friend. BraveStarr and the Law. When Billy Bob and Diamondback stumble upon a reserve of underground Kirium, they find it goes up to Star Peak, the abode of Shaman. They immediately lay a claim to the Kirium reserve, but promise not to oust the old man from his home and bother him either. Unfortunately, Outlaw Scuzz overhears and informs Tex Hex, who sends Vipra to control Clem Clodhopper, who registered the claim. BraveStarr visits Shaman, who assures him. Tex Hex conjures a fake claim and confronts Billy Bob and Diamondback. He destroys their claim, and when the marshal arrives, Tex Hex is only eager to set everything legally. With Clem under Vipra's influence, JB is forced to rule in favor of Tex, who claims to remove the shaman from Star Peak. Anyway, Marshall can't tolerate the atrocity anymore and gives up his badge as he cannot ask the shaman to leave. BraveStarr returns to Shaman, who reminds him of the time a young BraveStarr jumped into a forbidden lake to save a drowning bird. Shaman implores that BraveStarr must make a similar decision again. BraveStarr gets the clue and returns to Fort Kirium to get his badge. Meanwhile, Tex Hex and the troop approach Kirium, and Deputy Fuzz cannot handle it alone. Luckily, Doc Clayton also appears at the marshal's office and lets JB, BraveStarr and Fuzz know that Clem was hypnotized, but he has now revealed the truth. Empowered by the truth, BraveStarr leaves to confront Tex Hex. Fuzz joins and takes on cousin Scuzz, while 3030 takes out Cactus Head with a simple blow from Sarah Jane. Tex Hex summons a large snake and tries to strangle BraveStarr, but the marshal sends him rolling away. Later, BraveStarr visits Shaman and thanks him for the lesson. Kirium fever. While the human prospectors have a difficult time finding Kirium and affording sweet water, the Prairie people are having better luck in obtaining Kirium. When two such Prairie people arrive at the bar to buy sweet water, they get called names such as Little Critters and are chased by the prospectors. BraveStarr intervenes and stops the prospectors from attacking the Prairie people, but the prospectors suppose that BraveStarr should side with the humans. The news of the conflict reaches Tex Hex, and he decides to create a rift between the two factions to his own advantage. On the other hand, Deputy Fuzz gets upset with the humans calling his people derogatory names and worries if their community is in danger. BraveStarr explains that people often tend to blame others and attack those who cannot fend for themselves. He promises to save the Prairie people from the wrath of the prospectors, but it might be easier said than done. Before the prospectors could launch their assault, a few Prairie people, with their faces covered, attacked Judge JB and even kidnapped her. It's not hard to guess that BraveStarr and JB feel a little something for each other, and the incident drives BraveStarr mad. He blurts out the word Little Critters, but immediately apologizes to Fuzz. This incident is enough to trigger the prospectors, who decide to declare war on the Prairie people and take their turbo mules to attack them. However, BraveStarr believes that the attackers are not real Prairie people, and he is right, as the attackers turn out to be robots made by Tex Hex. BraveStarr also receives a message from the kidnappers which confirms his doubts. Since this is a typical space western cartoon, the style is an amalgamation of the Wild West and Victorian era, but JB's design makes her look most American. JB wakes up in Hexagon and manages to escape her restraints. She finds that Tex Hex has been spying on the people through the bar by using a fly spy, but Handlebar swats it away at last. JB picks up one of the robots and escapes Hexagon, but Tex Hex sends a reanimated Bronchosaur skeleton after her and even chases her. Thankfully, BraveStarr arrives in time and sends Tex Hex flying. He also stops the prospectors from attacking, and JB proves the prospectors wrong by showing them the robot. The prospectors apologize for their Kirium fever attitude, but when Fuzz shoots a rock to reveal Kirium, they rush after it.
Hey, nice.
Memories. While working late at night, Angus McBride is ordered by his daughter to sleep, but he spots a spaceship and follows it instead. Angus notices that the aliens constitute a group of Krang outlaws looking for Kirium and informs BraveStarr. However, as Angus gets captured, BraveStarr informs JB and takes 3030 to pursue the criminals. They come across a proud Commander Karen Kane of the Imperial Star Marines. She refuses to take BraveStarr and JB's help, considering them incompetent, but when JB mentions her father Angus, Karen is immediately interested. Meanwhile, Angus encounters the sheep people enslaved by the Krang outlaws. The Fooftars refuse to revolt. worried they might get hurt. As Angus and the Fooftars work at the mine, BraveStarr scans the area and finds Angus inside. BraveStarr and team, including Karen, confront the Krang outlaws. They refuse to give up, and a battle ensues. 3030 is only too happy to use Sarah Jane, while Angus and Karen greet and wait. Are they flirting? Earlier, Karen commented that 20 years ago, she had to pull out Angus from a prison planet on Alpha Centauri. BraveStarr and the team's interruption helps the sheep people to escape, but it's only half a battle won, as they need to catch the outlaws. The humans wait under the stars while Angus and Karen are about to make up. JB doesn't like the idea of them dating or marrying. She confronts Daddy, who comments that he loved his wife, but it's been 10 years since she died. JB's mum's name is revealed to be Eileen. BraveStarr also tries to make JB see sense, and that even her dad needs somebody to share his loneliness. The next morning, the team prepares to fight the villains, and even asks the sheep people to join. The second round of battle goes well for the humans as they catch the Krang outlaws, but the same cannot be said for the 3030. His shot also reveals Kirium, which the Krang leader uses to fly off, but BraveStarr and the rest handle it. JB also realizes her mistake and later presides over Angus and Karen's wedding.
You can't stop us all, BraveStarr!
Eyewitness. Kids always have weird fascinations, and alien children are no different. Bartender Handlebar finds two blue alien kids, Ben Wu and Maris Wu, excited to look at Tex Hex, and they even want to join him. Elsewhere, BraveStarr is worried that outlaw Scuzz and Thunderstick are keeping an eye on Shaman. BraveStarr catches them laying traps to catch the Shaman, but the crooks get caught in their own traps. They are taken into custody, leaving Tex Hex with fewer options. BraveStarr comes over at Star Peak to warn Shaman, but he is already aware of Tex Hex's plans, and BraveStarr promises not to let anything happen to Shaman. As Tex Hex, Vipra and Sandstorm plan how to capture Shaman, Ben and Maris approach him and ask to join his gang. Tex Hex laughs at them, but scares them away. However, when Sandstorm informs that Shaman will be given gifts by Miss Jenny's school children, he gets an idea. Cactus Heads picks up Ben and Maris right from their classes, right under Miss Jenny's nose. There's a clear lack of PTMs in New Texas. Anyway, Tex Hex ropes in the boys to deliver a package to Shaman and promises a place in the gang in exchange. The next day, during the school picnic, Ben and Maris venture out of the group to examine the package. It turns out to be a box releasing sleeping gas, but the plan still works out fine, as Shaman was on his way, and as the kids throw away the box, it lands directly in front of the Shaman, weakening him. Ben and Maris get scared, and while they try to run away, they slip and dangle from a cliff. Tex Hex and his gang surround Shaman, but he hears the boys cry out for help and gets restless. BraveStarr and 3030 also arrive at the spot, but follow Shaman's order and go after the kids to rescue them. The kids fall down the slope and into a flowing river that heads towards a waterfall. BraveStarr convinces 3030 to get into the river and then saves the boys. BraveStarr asks the boys to return to Fort Kirium and see the dock, but promises to question them later. The Marshal and 3030 then stop Tex Hex and gang from taking Shaman to Stampede. Tex Hex conjures 3 fire snakes, but BraveStarr throws a rock to take down the snakes and also catches the villains. Tex Hex escapes, leaving his company in the care of BraveStarr. Later, the JB rules that Ben and Maris have to bring supplies to Star Peak as punishment, but since they are alien children, she declares that they need a big brother who will watch after them. Handlebar volunteers, and it looks like he will have his hands full. The Vigilantes. BraveStarr saves a man called Borka from the attacks of dingoes, but learns that Borka was fighting the dingoes of his own accord. Borka is a vigilante who wants to get rid of Tex Hex for good and believes that BraveStarr's way of law and order doesn't work. At Trading Post Bar, Borka riles up the common people against Tex Hex and encourages them to pick up weapons. Angus McBride overhears and reports it in his newspaper, but doesn't share Borka's views. Soon, Borka is rallying up the entire mob to take the law into their own hands and takes all the arsenal to war with Tex Hex. Thunderstick arrives as a messenger and invites Borka to meet and talk it out with Tex Hex at Black Rock, on the condition that both will be alone and won't carry weapons. Well, this smells like a trap. Meanwhile, JB, Handlebar, Angus, and Mayor Derringer ask what BraveStarr will do to stop Borka. But the Marshal replies that Borka is doing everything legally, and so there is no way he can stop him. However, a worried BraveStarr still visits Sharman for advice, who asks him to stay on his own path of the law. BraveStarr is portrayed as a Native American just like Sharman, but Pat Fraley is a white actor. Borka and his gang of vigilantes arrive at Black Rock and notice Tex Hex standing a bit far away, but we have misgivings. When BraveStarr uses his hawk vision, he finds two Tex Hex, one at Black Rock and another approaching Fort Kirium with his carrion bunch. BraveStarr heads towards Fort Kirium, where Vipra tries to capture Fuzz, but JB saves him. BraveStarr confronts Tex Hex at Trading Post, and although Tex Hex becomes a giant ogre, BraveStarr is able to throw him away. At Black Rock, Borka shoots at Tex Hex and finds that it's a statue, but suddenly more statues start surrounding the men and attack. Although the gang defeats the statues, Sandstorm and Thunderstick try to beat them. BraveStarr and 3030 arrive foiling the plan, but when BraveStarr tries to arrest Thunderstick, Borka insists on killing him instead. This time the townspeople chastise Borka, and he gives in. BraveStarr also reveals that Tex Hex attacked Fort Kirium, and Borka feels guilty. He finally learns the value of law and order in fighting crime.
No, stay away, it's too dangerous.
Wild Child. BraveStarr, 3030, JB and Settler Zeke are on their way to find the Lost City, but Zeke abandons the mission midway and the rest enter the Badlands. A group of dingoes attacks the team when the sun is high. BraveStarr's team is able to attack back, but the dingoes escape, barring a little boy called Wild Child. Judge JB tends to a hurt Wild Child and finds that, as a kid, he wandered into the desert, and his parents left New Texas after searching for him for a long time. However, Wild Child is raised by dingoes and calls them family, so he wants to return to them. BraveStarr manages to convince him to find the dingo hideouts, but they stumble upon the Lost City instead. The empty city seems pretty haunting, and 3030 suddenly goes invisible like a poof. A voice further echoes, taunting BraveStarr and company. Wild Child comes in handy, as he has dingo-like powers and can sense somebody who is not dingo or human. He also sniffs out 3030 and leads BraveStarr. JB Mattel released several BraveStarr toys before the series, and there was some other merchandise. Although it featured our main heroes and villains, Judge JB action figures, never saw the light, as the second line of toys was cancelled. Once again, BraveStarr and JB make a deal with Wild Child not to hurt the dingoes and ask him to show the way. However, the mysterious entity continues to taunt and shoot at them. BraveStarr uses his speed and notices a ball of light, while Wild Child points out it's Zarko the Hunter, who never bothers the dingoes. He pursues it, but the ball of light vanishes. JB, a panicked Wild Child, attacks the light, but gets electrocuted and faints. Zarko reveals himself as a lion-like creature that has powers and can thwart BraveStarr. Zarko claims that he hunts adults, but not kids like Wild Child, as he too had a son who perished while saving him. Zarko gets confused by his own emotions and gives BraveStarr time to escape. BraveStarr telepathically connects with Sharman and asks his advice, who suggests that BraveStarr bring love into Zarko's heart. BraveStarr confronts Zarko again, but gets captured. As Wild Child hits Zarko, he shoves Wild Child in a reflex. A machine is about to drill Wild Child, and Zarko finally has a change of heart and saves the boy. He brings back JB and 3030. BraveStarr also suggests that he can either arrest Zarko the Hunter, or that Zarko can be a father to Wild Child. The kid agrees that although the dingoes cared for him, they were bad to others.
Enough fooling around.
Hail, hail, the gang's all here. BraveStarr wants to know about his past, and Sharman tells him that it's something he should find on his own. On his way back from Star Peak, BraveStarr and 3030 encounter an illegal landing of a robo-scout. It starts shooting, but the Marshal and his horse are able to defeat it. However, before they can find out where it came from, the robo-scout self-destructs. To be clear, it is sent by space pirates Captain Pegleg and Glebo Eglick. They want to find their ex-teammate Handlebar and get revenge. Meanwhile, Tex Hex is upset with his lackeys and plans on attacking Fort Kirium. He is in luck as the pirate ship lands before him, and Tex Hex strikes a deal with them. The pirates will attack Fort Kirium, and Tex Hex will enable them to leave with a barrel of Kirium. Back in the town, the McBrides chat with Handlebar about Tex Hex, and JB notices a pirate sigil on Handlebar's arm. However, he gets flustered and avoids the conversation. Fuzz suddenly notifies them of an impending attack, and JB asks him to put Fort Kirium into fortress mode. Handlebar further finds that a Neptunian Zadar bomb is approaching the town. Handlebar's pirate knowledge pays off, and the dude rushes out to stop the bomb. BraveStarr also joins him, but the bomb turns out to be a fake one, which is only meant to blackmail Handlebar. The pirate symbol makes Handlebar nervous, and he feigns sickness to escape. Since Master of the Universe is also a Filmation cartoon, it's possible that BraveStarr shares the same universe, and the space pirate theme definitely lines up. Handlebar continues to hide his secrets, making those around him more suspicious. Simultaneously, Glebo plans on making Handlebar open Fort Kirium's main gate so that they can rob as much Kirium after deactivating the defense systems. Glebo confronts Handlebar at his bar and makes the offer, while threatening that Marshal won't be his friend if he knows the truth. But both Marshal and Judge JB find out about Handlebar's past as a space pirate and that he cleared up. BraveStarr and 3030 witness Handlebar succumbing to a dilemma and then make the right choice. BraveStarr claims he knows about Handlebar's past and that it doesn't matter. The trio confronts the space pirates, while Tex Hex also appears and berates the space pirates for their incompetence. He turns everyone into stone with a spell, except BraveStarr. Tex Hex turns into a large bull, but the strength of the bear enables BraveStarr to subdue Tex Hex and make him return everyone to normal. Tex Hex escapes, and the pirates are arrested, while Handlebar reconciles with everyone.
Pleasant dreams for you.
Eye of the Beholder. Ali Kingston, a beautiful, blind, and no doubt rich woman, is at Fort Kirium to get a large shipment of Kirium, which she will use to cure blindness in children. Tex Hex and his crew get a whiff of it and attack the bank, but BraveStarr and 3030 run them down. Tex Hex falls from his skull walker and gets hurt. At the same time, Ali ventures out to get fresh air. She senses the injured Tex Hex, but doesn't recognize him and tends to his wounds. Tex Hex decides to take Ali hostage and lures her towards Hexagon. Apparently, the inclusion of a disabled person was an outright attempt by writers Tom Tatanovich and Michael Stevens to win an Emmy. Ali also reminds Tex of his ex, who was equally loving and caring, but he left her for Kirium. Meanwhile, JB gets worried about Ali, and BraveStarr takes 3030 to look for her. Ali realizes when the Marshal is near, but it scares Tex Hex, and he tries to run with Ali, but they trip and fall, causing a rock slide. Turns out Tex is a softie inside, at least for kind babes and not action girls like JB McBride. Anyway, Tex saves Ali from rockslide and vanishes before BraveStarr arrives, who saves Ali and runs with the speed of a puma. However, Ali refuses to believe that the person she was with is the evil being called Tex Hex. BraveStarr still warns others, and Fort Kirium goes into fortress mode. This is not a big deal for Tex Hex, as he has got Scuzz, who digs through the ground and gets the entire carrion bunch inside the fort. BraveStarr and 3030 stop Thunderstick and Cactus Head from looting the bank, but he has got Deputy Fuzz on hold. Handlebar comes in handy in saving Fuzz. Ali also realizes that Tex Hex is really the one trying to rob, but she still senses the loneliness in him, and Tex gets flustered. Ali stops Tex Hex from shooting BraveStarr, and Fuzz captures Vipra. Tex again escapes without his teammates, and Ali thanks everyone for their contribution. As Ali is about to leave, Tex secretly meets to return her scarf, but she lets him have it as a memento.
Let you do that, Commander!
The Wrong Hands. A Krang battle carrier arrives on New Texas, and Prairie person Twiz assumes them to be friends. His merry welcome almost signs a death note as Krang points their gun. There's a short fight between the Krang soldiers and the New Texas heroes, until the Krang commander confirms they have come to retrieve Kirium for a scientific experiment. Well, nothing illegal there, but thanks to a little bit of spying by Doc Clayton, BraveStarr soon learns that the Kirium will be used to power a supercannon called the Destroyer. Doc Clayton witnesses the Krangs testing the machine by disintegrating a rock formation to dust and informs the Marshal. The Krang doctor Zing has helped to create the Destroyer, and the Krang soldiers plan on using it to rule the galaxy, starting with New Texas. BraveStarr realizes that Kirium and weapons like the Destroyer in the wrong hands, like the Krang, will mean disaster. He remembers a time when, as a child, he used a mining tool to accidentally destroy a hut. Thank God it was abandoned, and Sharman helped him understand his mistake. By the way, Sharman's real name is never revealed in the series, and it's the only name and identity he goes by. BraveStarr decides to destroy the weapon, but gets surrounded by Doc Zing and other Krang soldiers. Again, thanks to some rash driving by Twiz and Fuzz, the Krangs have to disperse, and Zing gets captured by BraveStarr. As the Krang patrol arrives, BraveStarr knocks it off its path and takes his team to hide in the Prairie tunnel. In the meantime, Doc Clayton shares how disturbing it is for Zing to be a doctor and yet hurt others. BraveStarr also tries to convince Zing to help them, but he won't budge. BraveStarr then finds a Krang hover truck and drives it to fight the Krang guards and reach the cannon. He succeeds, with a little bit of help from Doc Clayton, Fuzz, and 3030. At last, Doc Zing realizes that the Krangs are on a destructive path and reveals a way to disable the machine. BraveStarr reverses the spinning power wheel on the cannon, and the Destroyer self-destructs. At the end, Galactic Federation battle cruisers arrive and capture the escaping Krangs, while Dr. Zing joins BraveStarr's company as another doctor on call.
Powers now grow slow!
An older hand. In this episode, Mayor Derringer takes Marshal BraveStarr and Deputy Fuzz to the energy chamber to show them the X-Kirium, which powers the town. However, its power is dwindling and an immediate supply of X-Kirium is required. This is, at the moment, impossible, unless you want to negotiate with outlaw Scuzz, because Cuz has somehow got the ownership of the only X-Kirium mine, which was previously owned by Fuzz's Uncle Mern. This sets off our heroes on their quest to take out Scuzz and find what Mern is up to. On their way, BraveStarr, 3030, fights some dingoes, while Fuzz leaves first to meet Uncle Mern. As soon as he arrives, Scuzz tells Fuzz that Uncle Mern is locked in Prairie People Jail. Well, a cage to be more precise. Uncle Mern reveals that he messed up while using magic to strengthen the mine's tunnels, leading to its immediate collapse. But superhero Thunderstick arrived and saved the people. Thunderstick soon shows his true colours and imprisons Fuzz with Mern, but dear old Mern has lost faith in his magic, so he can't really perform. Fuzz tries to contact BraveStarr, but Thunderstick takes him and hangs him upside down. BraveStarr arrives and finds Mern still locked up. He frees the old fellow and motivates him to use magic again, enabling Mern to find a way to get Fuzz out of Thunderstick's claws. What's more, Uncle Mern's greatest complaint is that he is getting old and losing power. This is yet another reminiscent of a plot in the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe episode Double-Edged Sword. But before that, BraveStarr must save Mern from Thunderstick's robot. Fuzz also escapes and comes across Mern and BraveStarr, whereas Thunderstick juices up on X-Kirium, which finally helps him fight equally with BraveStarr. But the Marshal still has help as Mern and Fuzz join hands to use magic in distracting Thunderstick. The episode ends with Uncle Mern reinstated as the mine's owner, and Fuzz even adorns him with a medal.
2 chances to ambush me, Hex!
Showdown at Sawtooth. BraveStarr meets up with Miner Rourke while he prepares to leave Sawtooth. Rourke complains of regular accidents and somebody stealing Kirium, which makes it unsafe for his family and not good for business either. As expected, this is another one of Tex Hex's malevolent plans to steal Kirium and turn the people against each other. Scuzz spies on BraveStarr, and when Roar invites BraveStarr inside the mines, Scuzz informs Tex Hex. The villains make one of Rourke's mining robots go haywire and cause a cave-in, which traps BraveStarr and Rourke inside. Outside, 3030 tries to find a way to get his buddy out. With BraveStarr out of the way, Tex Hex claims Sawtooth and gives the residents until sundown to evacuate. Cactus Head even shoots some bat dragons to coerce the residents. Once again, it's time for a flashback, as BraveStarr remembers another one of Shaman's lessons and floods the tunnel, so that the water of the underground river takes them outside. In the usual BraveStarr way, he doesn't ask if Rourke can swim, and the man almost chokes on water until BraveStarr saves him with heroics. The same background effect is used for BraveStarr's power-ups and for Battlecat's transformation in the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe series. So you can say the series is not as original as it seems to be. BraveStarr and Rourke find Tex Hex's reserve of stolen Kirium, and 3030 finds them at the same time. Fuzz also returns with distressing news of Sawtooth's capture. BraveStarr heads to Sawtooth with Fuzz, 3030 and Rourke, but the miners, including Rourke, are too scared to fight and hide inside their fortified homes. Meanwhile, BraveStarr challenges Tex Hex to fight at sundown. During the battle, Tex Hex is supported by Cactus Head and Scuzz, while Fuzz and 3030 help BraveStarr, but they keep getting trapped. However, seeing them fight alone inspires the villagers, and they come out of their homes to fight back against Tex Hex's gang in their own way. Tex Hex is finally driven away, as the people of Sawtooth reclaim their land.
That took care of him.
Unsung hero. Marshal BraveStarr arrives at a Sweetwater farm and meets farmer Freeman Tower. Freeman complains of dingoes always trying to take over his Sweetwater pods. Freeman's son David has installed a warning system to detect the dingoes, and it soon goes off, launching BraveStarr and 3030 into action. David urges his father to join the fight, but he won't, as he claims to be just a farmer. David gets upset by his father's attitude and idolizes crime fighters like BraveStarr and his horse. As a thank you, Freeman feeds BraveStarr Sweetwater. If you were wondering what Sweetwater is, it's basically watermelon water, out of a bizarre watermelon and cacti hybrid found only in New Texas. Freeman further laments that with everybody hankering after Kirium, he has no workers to help on his farm. Nevertheless, David's blatant disregard for his father is enough to annoy us, but BraveStarr manages to show compassion. 3030 tries to intervene and support the boy, but BraveStarr shuts him off. As 3030 grumpily gets away, he gets captured by dingoes, and despite BraveStarr jumping into action, 3030 is abducted. Freeman also jumps in to save BraveStarr and his ungrateful boy, but David refuses to notice it. So desperate times call for desperate measures, and BraveStarr sends Freeman to look for 3030 while he stays with the boy to look after the pods. Like other Filmation series, even BraveStarr always ends with a moral teaching. Sometimes they are integrated with the plot, while most of the time it's a small segment altogether. Meanwhile, 3030 is confined in an underground dingo base, and Howler toys around with Sarah Jane. As BraveStarr and David look through the scanners, they observe Freeman spying on dingoes and fighting Barker. The dingoes decide to attack the farm, but there is a power struggle until Howler leads the charge. He attacks the farm, but handling Sarah Jane is no easy feat. In the meantime, Freeman finds 3030 and notes that a horse can break the cell door. 3030 suddenly remembers he is one and breaks free. The equestroid carries Freeman on his back as they approach the farm. On the other hand, BraveStarr deliberately avoids taking down the 3 dingoes and even takes a shot to his chest to enable Freeman to show his heroism and defeat the dingoes. BraveStarr recovers, and David finally sees his father as the hero he is. BraveStarr even makes a deal with the dingoes to let them go if they work on Freeman's farm.
Peace, great creature.
Lost Mountain. While flying above the Lost Mountain, some kind of mysterious magnetism causes BraveStarr and Deputy Fuzzy's aircraft to crash. Tex Hex and his gang notice and hatch a plan to capture BraveStarr and get rid of him for good, as he is without 3030. BraveStarr finds an injured and confused Fuzz in the wreckage, who doesn't seem to recognize him. BraveStarr creates an arm sling for Fuzz and hides with him under leaves. Sounds keep Fuzz awake, and Marshall notices there's a saber bear cub trapped in the wreckage. BraveStarr helps the cub and leads it to his angry mother, but Mama Saber Bear is about to attack BraveStarr. The Marshal trips and falls, while he also discovers that his powers are gone because of the magnetism. The bear cub stops his mum from attacking and leaves on their way. Did you know that Filmation, the company producing this series, was purchased by L'Oreal? Before the studio shut down, there was also a BraveStarr spin-off in production. It was called Bravo and centered on the Prairie people. Now, as for the Hover Hex, it also goes haywire, but still lands on the Lost Mountains. Tex Hex and his lackeys try to track down BraveStarr, but the magnetism keeps messing with their search. So instead of finding the Marshal, Tex Hex and gang find the Saber Bear, who makes them run for their life. Tex Hex gets mad at his gang for their cowardice and wrong tracking. They eventually find the wreckage, but BraveStarr is not there. BraveStarr has made a ladder of sorts to carry the injured Fuzz out of the mountains. Scuzz notes the marks left by the ladder and BraveStarr's footprint, which they follow. BraveStarr also notices the Hover Hex flown remotely by Thunderstick and prepares to fight. He lays traps in the woods and confronts Tex Hex head-on. As Tex Hex and his lackeys get trapped, BraveStarr takes the Hover Hex to leave the Lost Mountain and takes Fuzz to the hospital to recover.
I'll stop him, Marshal.
Trouble wears a badge. Marshal BraveStarr, 3030, and Deputy Fuzz welcomes Marshal Carson, a rookie with a bad attitude who is forced to train under BraveStarr. Marshal Carson refuses to shake hands with Fuzz and doesn't feel he needs any training. Surely he can lend some confidence to others. Elsewhere, the McBrides investigate a ghost town called Dust City, as Papa McBride wants news for his paper. They witness an alien ship landing, but it controls Angus's turbo saddle, and JB has to rope it in. In Fort Kirium, Marshal Carson witnesses the Zack cousins arguing and tries to stop them with some gunpowder. Carson is a racist with hatred for aliens. BraveStarr stops Carson and the Zack cousin. A kid picks up Carson's fallen hat and trips, but Carson gives it to him, which makes BraveStarr realize that at least Carson has a good heart. JB approaches them with news of the alien ship, and BraveStarr takes Carson and 3030 to investigate. However, once again, Carson goes out of his way to shoot at the alien ship, which in retaliation animates the broken down vehicles to charge after them. Carson also bombs the ship, only aggravating the situation, as now it moves ahead to Fort Kirium. As per the series Bible, there is no Judge JB and her father, but we are happy with the addition, as female characters are awfully low in this one. Moving on, BraveStarr, Carson and 3030 returns to Fort Kirium and finds that the alien ship is controlling all the machines in the town. They try to fight back, but Carson's attitude spells more trouble. BraveStarr calls on Shaman for help, and Shaman appears before them. Shaman tells the story of a young BraveStarr who mistook Shaman's dragon friend Greenflame as a monster. Shaman's words of guidance work, as Carson works with Fuzz to take down some haywire machines, but his overzealousness gets him injured, and the alien ship sucks him inside. The alien uses a ray of sorts to heal Carson, but Marshal Carson is still mistaken and tries to attack. BraveStarr and 3030 enter the ship by force and stop Carson as they realize the alien is harmless. The alien confesses to being scared and that his ship actually crashed on New Texas. He admits to only using the machines to protect himself. Carson realizes the mistake, and the alien reveals itself as an anthropomorphic bunny and, in fact, a prince. BraveStarr promised to repair the damage on the alien ship. Later, Carson also leaves, now a changed man and promising to be the best marshal, except for BraveStarr.
You can't do thing about it.
Only you can find the key to your own.
Who am I? A group of explorers finds the lost book of the ancients on a planet and decides to take it to the shaman in New Texas. The information somehow reaches Scuzz, and he relays it to Vipra before telling Tex Hex. However, Vipra promises to deliver the news herself, and it's clear that she has her own agenda. In Fort Kirium, the head explorer refuses to wait for BraveStarr and takes a carriage to Star Peak. As usual, his carriage is stopped by Vipra, and she takes the book by force. JB has followed the carriage and tries to stop Vipra, but the evil serpentine woman sends JB to a pit of venomous snakes. Tex Hex and Scuzz confront Vipra, but she uses another spell to send Tex far, far away. With the book of spells in her clasp, Vipra decides it's time to take over Stampede. The monstrous evil, or the big bad, is physically revealed for the first time, but he was mentioned before. Vipra promises to Stampede to take down BraveStarr. The marshal in question notices the broken down carriage and learns about the book and Vipra. He also hears JB's call for help. However, on his way to rescue JB, Vipra lays a spell on BraveStarr, making him forget who he is and everything else. 3030 is shocked by the change, and when BraveStarr saves JB, she is equally astounded. JB realizes it's Vipra's signature and takes BraveStarr to Fort Kirium. BraveStarr visits Shaman, who asks him to concentrate on his feelings and remember who he is. BraveStarr joins 3030 and JB in fighting Vipra and her new gang, who have now joined her after Tex is gone. However, it's an uneven fight with Vipra holding the lost book of ancients. As Vipra tries to use another spell, JB snatches away the book. But Vipra remembers the spell and uses it to control the trio of heroes. With them, Vipra lays siege to Fort Kirium and obtains the key to the town from Mayor Derringer. However, BraveStarr keeps repeating Shaman's words in his mind, which helps him overcome the control and remember himself. BraveStarr uses his power of speed to snatch back the book and then destroy it to reverse the spells. Everyone returns to their normal state, and even Tex Hex is brought back. Like JB, we are glad to see dear old Tex back, and he is ready for revenge on Vipra. BraveStarr and the Treaty. A senator examines New Texas and finds it perfect for setting up a galactic space fighter station. Tex Hex spies on Senator Chambers and cooks up a plan to get a hold over the space fighter stations so that he can steal a few jets and conquer the galaxy. Tex Hex makes the dingoes attack Senator Chambers and pretends to save him, convincing the senator that he is a good guy. BraveStarr approaches the senator and is astounded to see him defend Tex. Later, the senator demands that the marshal leave with him to get the planes and set up the base. BraveStarr is unwilling to leave Fort Kirium, but the senator promises to make Tex Hex sign a paper that says Tex will not attack. The mayor ridiculously agrees, and BraveStarr has few options, whereas Tex Hex and gang laugh at the people of Fort Kirium. However, when it's time for BraveStarr to depart, he refuses, and Senator Chambers orders Tex Hex to restrain the marshal. It comes as a big blow to BraveStarr when the people of Fort Kirium don't oppose the idea. Shaman appears to him and reminds him of another lesson concerning a fly that deliberately got itself stuck in a spider web in its greed to get nectar. As per the series Bible, there was no shaman, and Tex Hex was just a greedy outlaw. The changes sure make the story a lot different from what it was initially supposed to be. 3030 and JB want to help BraveStarr, but the Marshal wants to reveal Tex Hex's true nature. Soon, the fighter ship arrives, but Tex steals the beacon and takes it to Hexagon, luring the fighter ship there. Sandstorm further puts the astronauts to sleep. However, BraveStarr and his friends arrive at Hexagon. Tex Hex takes control of the ship and attempts to attack, yet once again, BraveStarr holds the ship and flings Tex Hex. The pilot thanks BraveStarr and returns to its galactic base. Senator Chambers realizes his mistake of trusting Tex Hex, but finds the planet too dangerous for a space station. The mayor apologizes and realizes greed doesn't pay. But hey, there's always the future.
Did it, Marshal?
Yeah, we're out of here. Uh-oh.
Thoren the Slave Master. Tex Hex makes a deal with Thoren the Slave Master that he will bring Prairie people as slaves for Thoren in exchange for a weapon that will help Tex Hex defeat BraveStarr and conquer the town. Meanwhile, it's celebration time in Fort Kirium, as it's the town's birthday, and the Prairie people are going to join. However, they are a no-show, as Tex Hex kidnaps a bunch of them after trapping them in tunnels. Woody, a young Prairie people, escapes and rushes to the town to inform Deputy Fuzz of the spaceship that has taken his family friends. BraveStarr uses his powers and watches Thoren's spaceship hovering over Hexagon. He takes Deputy Fuzz and 3030 to attack. Inside his spaceship, Thoren complains of not having enough slaves, but turns the Prairie people even smaller. Thoren even shrinks Tex Hex to miniature size and confines him in a cage. When BraveStarr and company arrive to take down the villain, they experience the same fate and are locked alongside Tex Hex. Scenes from this portion are actually reanimated from He-Man, which is a concurrent theme for this series. Stuck in this odd predicament, Tex Hex agrees to work with BraveStarr to escape the cage. BraveStarr enables Fuzz to get out and take back Sarah Jane. However, in a usual clumsy manner, Fuzz trips and draws the attention of the robo-guards to himself. BraveStarr urges Fuzz to use the gun to break the jail. Fuzz succeeds, and the heroes, with one Tex Hex, fight the guards. Fuzz again makes his way to the machine that helps him switch everyone back to normal size, including the captured Prairie people. However, when Thoren reappears, Tex Hex sides with him. Of course, it would be only foolish to trust the purple fellow. As 3030 gets back with Sarah Jane, BraveStarr uses the minimizer on Tex Hex, Thoren, and his guards. BraveStarr also sends the pirate ship with the miniaturized villains far into space. The price. The story starts with Shaman sensing an evil threatening a young boy, and then it shifts to kids Daisy, Brad, and Jay playing in their fortress-like clubhouse in the outskirts of Fort Kirium when a suspiciously suited-up dingo meets them. The dingo turns out to be a dealer for a drug called Spin. He offers the kids the taste of a free sample, and although Brad and Daisy refuse, Jay tries it out. Meanwhile, BraveStarr and 3030 have their hands full dealing with Spin addicts. The addicts behave deranged and are locked up for their safety. Soon the cells start to fill up with minors who have become addicted to Spin, and Doc Clayton is called to examine them. The Marshal notices Brad wanting to share something, but Brad chickens out, not wanting to break his promise and ruin his friendship with Jay. However, Jay gets addicted, and when he approaches the dealer, he asks for 3 Kirium nuggets. Jay steals his mum's purse and gets another dose of spine. Brad eventually finds Jay in a delirious state inside the clubhouse. Brad decides to tell the Marshal, but Jay strangles Brad like a mad person and makes him promise not to tell. Brad gets upset and leaves, while Jay again borrows Kirium from Daisy to get Spin. Brad suffers a dilemma as he wonders whether to keep his promise or save his friend. Shaman appears to Brad and guides him in his decision. Nevertheless, BraveStarr notices that most of the Spinheads are Stone Canyon miners, and he deduces that the factory must be near. BraveStarr takes time to find it, and leaves with 3030 to stop it. Brad arrives a bit late, and waits for the Marshal to return. BraveStarr returns after arresting the dingo's barker, Goldtooth, for making Spin, and also after destroying the factory. He approaches Brad, who finally confesses about what's happening to Jay. Jay's mother also arrived at the same time, complaining that her son had not returned. Brad takes them to the clubhouse and faints as soon as he sees Jay's lifeless body lying. BraveStarr confirms his death, and Jay's mum breaks down. The dealer is put behind bars, and the episode ends with a funeral for the boy. Revolt of the Prairie people. In this story, Marshal BraveStarr encounters a Galactic Council ship in the desert and Prairie people territory. BraveStarr learns from Commander Wall that in order to keep the Prairie people safe, the Galactic Council has decided to fence off their territory so that no one can get outside and no one can get inside. However, the proposition sounds harsher, and BraveStarr doesn't agree. Commander Wall's general disregard for the Marshal and the feelings of the people adds to the things that sound problematic. BraveStarr informs Chief Tussle about the issue, and Prairie people relates it to how the Indians were treated long ago. Fuzz joins the rebellion and gives up his badge to support his community. The news of the force field and fencing reaches Tex Hex, and he sends the dingoes to volunteer for the fencing, which will enable them to reach the underground and steal Kirium. However, Before BraveStarr can do anything, he witnesses the Prairie people taking out the dingoes. BraveStarr realizes that the Prairie people have called on war and warns them, but also promises to be by their side. Later, BraveStarr, JB, and 3030 try to convince Commander Wall. However, she is only doing her duty and won't budge. She even calls on the galactic ships for defense and is adamant about her stance. BraveStarr warns Chief Tussle about the troops, but it's actually an army of robots. A desperate Commander Wall decides to take the Prairie people to another planet for their own good. BraveStarr chooses to change the order and reach out to the Galactic Council. He makes a very justifiable case for the Prairie people's freedom to General Graves. BraveStarr returns with the changed order, but it's too late as the Rob troopers are already activated. So a battle commences as BraveStarr and 3030 stop the Robo troopers by using their powers. Commander Wall realizes her mistake and leaves, while BraveStarr returns Fuzz's bag. Hostage. The episode begins with Stampede chastising Tex Hex for his continuous failure to capture the shaman. Tex Hex promises Stampede to get shaman this time. Back in the town, there is an illness going on, and Doc Clayton notes that the people are recovering. The group is further distracted by Fuzz tweaking with Doc Clayton's turbo mule. BraveStarr controls the haywire vehicle, and Fuzz learns his lesson. However, Shaman soon falls ill and calls on BraveStarr. The Marshal rushes to his mentor along with 3030, while Tex Hex and his gang keep a watch. BraveStarr goes inside Star Peak and finds that Shaman has collapsed. As BraveStarr takes Shaman to the hospital, Tex Hex and the gang follow. Doc Clayton claims that Shaman will be all right, but before he recovers, Tex Hex and gang take away the shaman. Tex Hex meets BraveStarr at Handlebar's bar and shows him Shaman's amulet as proof that he has got Shaman. Tex Hex asks BraveStarr to quit if he wants Shaman to be all right, and BraveStarr makes a deal with Tex Hex that he will not touch the Kirium shipment. However, it was a pretty clever idea by BraveStarr to loop in Tex Hex, as there are no shipments of Kirium. Now, not knowing about BraveStarr's plan, JB approaches the Marshal to not leave and then picks up ammunition to leave for Hexagon in order to rescue Shaman. We are glad to see JB back in the scene, and her being an action girl is sure something you won't want to miss. Judge JB arrives at Hexagon, and the Doc and Fuzz follow in. JB shows off her fighting skills to save Doc and Fuzz, as well as rescue the Shaman. However, Stampede tries to stop them, and Shaman uses his powers to distract Stampede, allowing the group to escape. Meanwhile, Tex Hex and gang arrive at Fort Kirium to steal the shipment that never existed in the first place. BraveStarr and 3030 fight back the Shaman, stopping him from returning to Hexagon. At last, JB turns up with Shaman, and BraveStarr defeats Tex Hex for good, but the villain escapes. Shaman leaves after being recovered, but presents JB with an amulet for her bravery. The good, the bad, and the clumsy. At the Marshal's office, Deputy Fuzz tries to train a hound bot he has got, entertaining BraveStarr and 3030 in the process. However, Angus comes bearing bad news about Outlaw Billy the Droid, robbing the Fort Kirium bank. BraveStarr and company rush to stop them, and although BraveStarr and 3030 are able to take down the thugs, Billy the Droid takes a clumsy Fuzz hostage and escapes. Billy the Droid throws Fuzz in a pig pen before leaving, and when the news reaches Tex Hex, he decides to join hands with Billy the Droid. Meanwhile, Fuzz feels ashamed and embarrassed for being a liability and a klutz. Mayor Derringer decides to fire Fuzz as he blames the deputy for the money lost. I would definitely like to know how Fuzz even got the job, but let's move on for the sake of BraveStarr. Fuzz decides it's time he proves his mettle and catches Billy the Droid single-handedly, and so he takes the hound bot to track down the robber. They get inside a cave and come across Outlaw Scuzz. After a round of meaningless scuffle, Fuzz tries to arrest Scuzz, but Billy the Droid finds them first. He captures and hangs Fuzz, Scuzz, and hound bot by their leg. The Prairie people were supposed to be shrewd, opportunistic, and have their own shamans and magicians. Back at Marshal's office, BraveStarr and 3030 come across Fuzz's message and set off rescuing the little guy. They eventually find the cave and enter it, interrupting Billy and his gang. As the fighting starts, 3030 and BraveStarr get trapped by the villains, but Houndbot helps Fuzz free, and BraveStarr encourages Fuzz to use the freeze gun on Billy. The day is saved thanks to Fuzz's 1-minute bravery. Later, BraveStarr recalls another childhood story, when the shaman made him drive a hydro canoe on his own to boost his flashback. BraveStarr points out that he used the same way to boost Fuzz's confidence. Now it's time to let Scuzz go, as he has done nothing except smoke a bad cigar. 3030 sends him a message for Tex Hex. It turns out to be a bad name for the villain, and he shoots at Scuzz for delivering the message. Balance of power. When BraveStarr informs Shaman about a sick Prairie people who is not recovering, Shaman realizes it's a spell by Stampede. He decides to take the bait and teleports BraveStarr and 3030 to the Prairie settling. When they reach the Prairie tunnel, Shaman gives 3030 his staff and ventures inside with BraveStarr. 3030 grumps about guarding a stick. This is the opportunity Thunderstick and Scuzz have been waiting for. They trick 30 into throwing down the stick and obtain it. This serves Shaman, right? For trusting the trigger-happy horse with a magical stick. Inside the tunnel, Shaman examines a sick Twiz and cures him with magic. However, when they come outside, 3030 feels ashamed and apologetic for losing the staff. Well, too late. Stampede got the staff and threatens Shaman. Later, Stampede uses the staff to turn a toy-sized robot into a giant and animate it. As the giant stomps towards Fort Kirium, it shakes the ground. BraveStarr orders Fuzz to activate the fortress mode, and Shaman uses all his power to shackle the giant and stall it for a while. Shaman then suggests they must retrieve the staff to stop the cattle spirit stampede. 3030 is still embarrassed and blames himself. This provokes BraveStarr and Shaman to again go into flashback mode. Apparently, BraveStarr once failed to protect a moon plant from the harsh suns as he chased after a baby crab. The plant died, and so next time he took special care and the flowers blossom. Even though these little flashbacks are often distractingly interesting, it's a lot tiring to watch BraveStarr summon the power of animals as reused footage is used throughout the entire series. Nevertheless, 3030 gets inspired and seeks to go alone in bringing back the staff. So there goes BraveStarr and Shaman distracting Stampede and his lackeys, while 3030 climbs the hexagon from the back. Speaking of hexagon, where is Tex Hex when we need him? With only Thunderstick and Scuzz to defend the lair, Stampede turns them giant size, but they are no match for BraveStarr and Shaman. BraveStarr and his mentor get rid of the lackeys and enter the lair, while 3030 also makes it after much grunting and hard work. He swiftly snatches the staff and returns it to Shaman for him to fight Stampede and subdue him for good for a while. In the meantime, the giant has been breaking his shackles, and Shaman turns it back into a toy. The episode ends with another side character's glow up after a major screw-up. Call to arms. As a Krang destroyer ship approaches New Texas, the Krang commander, a wizard named Clawtooth, clouds their arrival from Shaman. They arrive at Star Peak and take Shaman by surprise. With an attack from the back, Clawtooth and the Krang soldiers capture Shaman. BraveStarr senses his mentor is in trouble and rides 3030 to arrive at Star Peak. However, it's too late, and Clawtooth demands 3 tons of Kirium in exchange for Shaman, prompting BraveStarr to steal if needed. Of course, Clawtooth doesn't intend ever to let Shaman go, as he is right now the golden goose. BraveStarr returns to Fort Kirium and tells his friends about his predicaments. He takes the most sensible decision of not involving 3030 in his mission to rescue the Shaman, and instead asks for help from a forgotten character, Commander Kane. Angus's new wife seems to be bored in retirement and readily agrees. They use a hologram of Kirium to enter Star Peak, and when the hologram falters, BraveStarr takes down the guard. Inside Star Peak, Clawtooth has tied Shaman to a mystic post that prevents him from using his powers and drains him of energy. Clawtooth seems to be a jealous little fellow and mentions Alderaan, where everyone talks about Shaman's great deeds. Shaman remains positive that BraveStarr will arrive to save him, and Clawtooth senses the hero approaching. As per their plan, BraveStarr ensures the Krangs remain unaware of Karen Kane's presence. Karen and BraveStarr subdue all the Krang soldiers and listen to the radio instructions to locate the Shaman. After disposing of all the soldiers, they confront Clawtooth, but he freezes Karen, tries to bring down Star Peak, and escapes in the Krang destroyer. BraveStarr saves Shaman from being crushed and even protects Karen. For the first time, Shaman appears pissed, and he brings down the ship, which crashes in Fort Kirium, and 3030 arrests Clawtooth for illegal parking. Shaman thanks BraveStarr and especially the commander for help. Interestingly, the episode ends with making children aware of good and bad touch, which, although unrelated to the story, is exactly copied from the She-Ra Princess of Power episode, Horde Prime Takes a Holiday. BraveStarr and the Three Sons. It's an uneventful, hot and humid day at Fort Kirium, but it's especially stormy over Hexagon. Stampede is angry at Tex Hex for failing to drive out the miners and settlers. So Stampede has outsourced new talent, a certain someone named Marabun and his robo-saber Grox. Tex Hex cowers away at the sight of the duo and is thrown out by Stampede. Marabun turns out to be quite ambitious to prove his might. He uses a mechanical snake to break a bridge, and although BraveStarr and 3030 escape falling, BraveStarr has to use strength to prevent the bridge from collapsing and protect a carriage from an accident. Marabun quickly realizes it won't be easy to impress his boss and threatens BraveStarr and the townsfolk to abandon the land. BraveStarr and the townspeople hardly bother, whereas Marabun steals 2 of the 3 sons of New Texas, plunging the town into darkness and cold. As a result, the townspeople decide it's better to abandon the planet. However, BraveStarr is not startled and visits the shaman for help, who reminds BraveStarr of another childhood training. It involved a blindfolded young BraveStarr sensing his surroundings through his 5 senses. At present, none is available, and so BraveStarr decides to heed another advice, which is to focus on his brain and feeling. He realizes Stampede must have hidden the sons underground and in an abandoned mine. If you are expecting science and logic here, you are a fuzz brain. Judge JB further brings news about Marabun being wanted by the Galactic Council. BraveStarr and 3030 confront Marabun and Grox, but they might be an unmatched pair. No problem. JB is here to aid the guys, but she is a damsel after all, and BraveStarr has to spare time in saving her when she falls. However, it's JB who stops Marabun and Grox from escaping, whereas BraveStarr uses his star badge to slice through the ground and let the suns return to their orbits. Marabun is sent to the Galactic Council prison, and it's hot again in New Texas. Perhaps it's time to call back Tex Hex to heat it up further.
Cover? Don't be silly.
The Witnesses. BraveStarr meets a Kirium freighter captain who shows him that he has got 2 stowaways. The quarrelling duo named Dax and Botch turns out to be running away from a terrifying criminal called Slug Moody. Is it us? Or does Slug Moody look like Handlebar? Moody arrives in New Texas and encounters Thunderstick, Hogtie, and outlaw Scuzz. He promises them pure Kirium crystals if they help him find Dax and Botch. Meanwhile, BraveStarr locks up Dax and Botch for their own safety when he learns that they are witnesses to a bank robbery by Slug Moody and are also responsible for sending him to jail from which Moody escaped. Moody and the Carrion Bunch arrive in town, and Moody tries to strike a deal with the marshal, but BraveStarr refuses. As BraveStarr and JB fight the villains, a stray shot blows up the prison walls, exposing Dax and Botch. As they try to run away, Moody follows. Marshal BraveStarr realizes the witnesses cannot survive on their own, and along with 3030, he takes the witnesses to the Hall of Equestroids, and Shaman appears as their guard. While BraveStarr and 3030 leave to confront the villains, Shaman recalls a story about how BraveStarr rose up to face his bullies. Dax and Botch realize that Moody is a bully who is trying to frighten them. BraveStarr locates Slug Moody's spaceship, but Moody and the Carrion Bunch have BraveStarr at gunpoint. As BraveStarr and 3030 fight, Dax and Botch are teleported to the location, and they join the fight in capturing Slug Moody. However, Moody refuses to pay the Carrion Bunch and escapes with his ship, only for BraveStarr to pursue and catch him. Moody is imprisoned for good, while Dax and Botch continue to argue. Handlebar and Rampage. The episode starts with some rambling, as Altron and his sister Thoren realize it's the monster called Rampage. Somewhere else in space, Krang ships decide to attack New Texas to get slaves and Kirium. They attack the Iron Mountain mining settlement, and Altran calls BraveStarr as he and 3030 hang out at Handlebars. However, Handlebar runs into trouble as the ground below him suddenly breaks, and Handlebar falls into the abyss. BraveStarr and 3030 arrive at the settlement and save almost everyone, except for Thoren, who is abducted by the Krangs. As for Handlebar, he faces off with the Iron Monster, a giant robo-bull called Rampage. A Rampage action figure with a remote control was promoted for the second wave of toys, but it didn't see the light of day as the line was cancelled. Despite Handlebar's extraordinary resume, Rampage is not impressed and continues to attack Handlebar. Meanwhile, On the Krang ship, Krang soldiers are not really keen on facing BraveStarr, but the commander decides to make a trade Thoren for BraveStarr. However, BraveStarr is knocked unconscious and taken aboard, but the commander refuses to let Thoren go. Meanwhile, Rampage almost knocks over Handlebar into a river of lava, but Handlebar moves away and Rampage falls off the edge. As Rampage hangs for life, Handlebar rescues the bull and befriends it. He rides Rampage to reach the Iron Mountain settlement and join 3030. As the Krang destroyer ship starts attacking, Rampage knocks it, which damages the ship's system. As the force field bars vanish, Thoren is free to wake up BraveStarr. While Rampage, Handlebar and 3030 launch an attack from the ground, BraveStarr takes them on from the inside. The Marshal uses the Krang cannon to destroy the ship's engine, and Thoren reunites with her brother. They share their gratitude to Handlebar and Rampage, but are surprised that Handlebar has won over the most dangerous beast in New Texas.
Me a stupid toads! This is my ship and I say we fly it!
Runaway Planet. Doc Clayton gets an electro-telescope, and Fuzz gets interested. As Doc explains the stars and planets to Fuzz, he looks through the telescope and notices a strange planet that does not belong to the solar system. The strange planet's gravitational pull causes disruptions to the cargo ships in space. Retro West, the pilot of a cargo ship, gets warned, but he is an arrogant, unruly fellow who refuses to listen and crashes in New Texas anyway. BraveStarr and 3030 rescue Retro and take him to Doc Clayton. But despite an injured arm, Retro remains ungrateful and wants to leave the planet. With Angus bringing further information from Space Control, Doc Clayton further explains that the stray planet has broken away from its own solar system and is now on a collision course with New Texas. BraveStarr suggests blowing up the planet with magnemite, but it needs to be placed on the planet, and it needs to be seen if the planet hosts any life. BraveStarr decides to take Retro's ship and ignores his protests. Molly is assigned to fly the ship, but Retro also makes sexist comments about women not being good pilots. However, BraveStarr hails Molly and they set off for the voyage. But we can feel Retro having a reckoning. As they arrive near the planet, the waves radiated from the planet make it difficult for Molly to fly the ship safely, and BraveStarr orders her to fly it low so he can safely drop the magnemite bomb. However, before they can leave the planet, Doc Clayton picks up a sudden signal of existing life form. They have to now make a U-turn, and Retro argues that they shouldn't risk their lives for aliens. This reminds BraveStarr of his childhood, when he captured a butterfly in a jar, and Shaman asked him to let it go, as all life matters. BraveStarr is brought back from his thoughts by a complaining Retro who tries to stop Molly, and BraveStarr locks Retro in a cabin. As it turns out, there are two funny-looking aliens, but they are rather naughty as they play hide-and-seek with Molly. The aliens enter the ship, just as Retro breaks through. Retro tries to flee with the ship, but the alien critters accidentally eject Retro off the ship and bring it back to the ground. Retro falls in one of the craters, which serves him just right, but BraveStarr tries to help him out with only a few minutes left till blast. The aliens help too, and then they reveal they are the only ones left on the planet. The Voyagers leave with the aliens as the planet explodes behind. Later, Retro leaves after bidding goodbye to his new friends. Molly marvels at the changed man, and the aliens leave with Retro. The Bounty Hunter. When bounty hunter Luke Jones, with a bad reputation, turns up at Handlebar, Dingo Dan decides it's time to exact revenge for sending his brother to the roughest prison planet. As he takes Goldtooth and Barker to surround Luke Jones, Handlebar tries to stop the fight, and instead, what ensues is a food fight at the trading post. Fuzz informs BraveStarr, and although Marshall breaks up the fight, Goldtooth tries to shoot, and Fuzz catches him. Luke Jones informs that he is after Doc Clayton, who has apparently stolen medical supplies and is on the run. Of course, BraveStarr refuses to believe it, and gets worried that Luke has a reputation for killing the people he is supposed to catch. Dingo Dan overhears and hatches a plan to both get rid of Luke Jones and get the prize money for catching the doctor. Dingo Dan turns out to be a shapeshifter, and he changes his face to a human prospector in order to get Goldtooth out. Now, as BraveStarr rides 3030 to find the doctor, he senses someone following. After horsing around with some horse puns and metaphors, BraveStarr asks 3030 to lead the followers astray while he finds Doc Clayton. However, it doesn't work as Luke Jones has BraveStarr and Doc Clayton at gunpoint. On the other hand, as the dingoes attack, the three of them have to take cover. Doc Clayton claims that he was falsely blamed for stealing medical supplies by a mining company that was undertaking unsafe practices. As the fight with the dingoes continues, Doc Clayton escapes to visit his patient, while the bounty hunter assumes that Doc has run away, and as 3030 arrives, Luke Jones uses sleeping gas on the marshal and his horse. When they wake up, it's already 2 hours, and BraveStarr arrives at the mine that Doc Clayton was supposed to visit to treat his patient. However, upon using his optivisor, BraveStarr learns that both Doc Clayton and Luke Jones are captured by dingoes. As BraveStarr and 3030 approach them, the dingoes intentionally disturb the sand crabs, sending them after the heroes. BraveStarr and 3030 get rid of the sand crabs with some crab puns to go by. He then helps Luke Jones and Doc Clayton. When Jones injures his leg, the Doc insists on opening his cuffs, and he treats Luke. BraveStarr catches Dingo Dan, thanks to his fancy hat. Later, Luke Jones leaves without Doc Clayton, as he has now realised that the Doctor is truly innocent. Buddy. BraveStarr meets his oldest friend, Dallas Dodson, who has come to New Texas. Dallas introduces BraveStarr and 3030 to his son Buddy. Dallas seems overprotective of his son as Buddy is disabled and his wife Betsy has died. BraveStarr offers to speak to Buddy and learns that he wants to be treated like any other boy, and BraveStarr encourages him to talk it out with Dallas. BraveStarr goes out of his way to make Buddy an honorary deputy. We got a feeling this is going to backfire, and so it does. When the next day, Buddy turns up cosplaying BraveStarr. He even intrudes upon a hold-up at the bank and accidentally knocks out BraveStarr while outlaw Snake Eye escapes. The criminal's other partner, Bear Claw, is sent behind bars, but he remains confident that Snake Eye will get him out. Now, that's what true friendship looks like. Anyway, 3030 is mad and takes away Buddy's badge. Of course, this means Buddy has to catch Snake Eyes on his own, as apparently that's what kids are supposed to do in cartoon. When BraveStarr wakes up, he gets all the bad news, and even Dallas panics. Good thing he is not blaming BraveStarr for making his son an honorary deputy. As for Buddy, he travels to the Badlands in his turbo mules and climbs a mountain. Oh yes, he did. And gets caught by Snake Eye. Dallas and BraveStarr follow tracks and decide to take separate routes in finding the boy. Dallas finds them first and is tied down beside his boy. BraveStarr confronts Snake Eye, who demands that a ship filled with the Kirium, which he couldn't steal, be returned, and Bearclaw be released. Buddy further gives his dad the idea of a Trojan horse, and Dallas signals BraveStarr. Sometime later, a ship turns up as 3030, and JB watches. Fuzz releases Bearclaw, but Snake Eye decides to keep Buddy hostage and lets Dallas go. As they take off, BraveStarr reveals himself and takes down the villains. The ship almost crashed, but BraveStarr and Buddy manage to make a safe landing. Afterwards, Buddy claims he doesn't need the badge, as he will be spending more time with his dad, doing normal activities. The day the town was taken. Romance is in the air of New Texas. Well, at least in Fuzz's life, as he shows the marshal's office to Wozella and introduces her to 3030. However, they soon have to go and rescue Judge JB and Handlebar, who are stuck in the desert, attacked by dingoes. As BraveStarr and 3030 rush to rescue, Tex Hex and the Carrion Bunch watch from a monitor, gleefully. The dingo attack appears to be a part of an elaborate plan to capture Fort Kirium. Tex Hex sends Sandstorm on an errand and then lays siege to Fort Kirium with the Carrion Bunch. He even activates the fort's defense system to lock BraveStarr out, while Wozella spies on them. Meanwhile, BraveStarr, 3030 and Fuzz fight the dingoes, and BraveStarr summons the speed of a puma and a bear to take out the rest of the dingoes. As we watch the show, two questions come to our minds. Number one, how long does the power of an animal last within BraveStarr? And number two, can he summon all the powers together at the same time? Let us know what you think about that. Moving on, the heroes make their way to the city and find it's locked. BraveStarr suggests taking help from Wozella and uses a cup telephone to contact Wozella. This sure makes us pretty nostalgic, but we have a Prairie people babble to decipher. On the other hand, Tex Hex packs up all the Kirium while Sandstorm arrives with a space freighter. Tex sends Scuzz to switch on the landing lights and warns him not to open the gates mistakenly. Wuzella is also given instructions to open the gates, and she uses some quick makeup to flirt with Scuzz. Wuzella manages to manipulate Scuzz and open the doors, allowing the heroes to enter and take on the villains. However, Sandstorm gets scared and leaves with the freighter, while Tex Hex damages the defense control in anger. Tex escapes, and Scuzz chases after Wuzella, who trips and falls in between closing doors. As Wuzella gets stuck, Scuzz runs away, and BraveStarr, along with 3030, jumps in to save her. Lastly, Fuzzy Boy helps Wuzella out, and the day is saved with the heroics of one little girl. BraveStarr and the Medallion. As Handlebar gets several packages delivered, BraveStarr notes that New Texas is experiencing a rising population with new visitors. Just then, a stranger inquires about the Stratastage, which is piloted by Molly. BraveStarr notices the guy has the same medallion as his and wonders if the man belongs to Shaman's family. The man introduces himself as Luke and claims that the medallion is a family heirloom. BraveStarr gets excited to introduce Luke to Shaman, but nobody else is allowed to visit Star Peak. On the other hand, meeting Shaman and seeking his permission will require time, but Luke claims to be busy and will leave as soon as possible. This turns out to be a ploy by Tex Hex to put out the eternal fire burning inside Star Peak. Tex Hex appears before Luke and gives him an extinguisher to put out the fire, while it appears the medallion is a fake one made by Tex Hex to fool BraveStarr. JB notices Tex Hex with Luke and has a sense of foreboding, but she is too late as BraveStarr leaves with Luke to enter Star Peak. In the town, Handlebar tells the children a story about the heroics of BraveStarr and how he wouldn't hurt even the ferocious ones. The portion seems rather out of context, but it sure tells a lot more about BraveStarr's strength and valor. When JB finally reaches the marshal's office, he learns that he is on the way to Star Peak. Fuzz further insists on joining her as the duo rides off to Shaman's place. Tex Hex relays the plan to Stampede, who waits to gain control over Star Peak. On their way, Tex Hex and Thunderstick attack BraveStarr, 3030, and Luke to ensure BraveStarr doesn't doubt the stranger. At Star Peak, Shaman examines the medallion and asks him a question, to which Luke lies. Shaman calls aside BraveStarr and tells him that Luke is lying. Meanwhile, Luke has put out the fire and BraveStarr notices the smoke. As BraveStarr confronts Luke, Tex Hex appears and shoots at him, but BraveStarr shields himself with Luke. He closes the cave door, but the shaman informs him that his power is weakening. BraveStarr scrambles to get back the fire, but there seems to be no hope. 3030, JB and Fuzz enter at the same time, but Fuzz finds a burning piece of Kirium, which helps in starting the eternal fire again and restoring the shaman's powers. BraveStarr apologizes for trusting Luke, and Shaman reminds him of a childhood moment when BraveStarr tried to pluck a flower, and a snake beneath it tried to sting BraveStarr. With another lesson learned, life returns to normal at Fort Kirium, but Handlebar might have to deal with a major case of wrong items delivered.
Thank you, my friend.
Legend of a Pretty Lady. There's an argument at the trading post regarding the history of New Texas. Fuzz is adamant on the legend of the giants, the prairie people, and the pretty lady, but Mayor Derringer thinks it's hogwash. At that same moment, Judge JB convicts a snake-like alien outlaw, Zlarb, and as she holds a tray full of purified Kirium, it gets hit by a lightning bolt, and JB vanishes into thin air, leaving sparkles behind. JB turns up 1,000,000 years in the past and witnesses a live brontosaurus. However, it's not the time to get awed and smart. JB decides to climb the highest cliff to get herself to safety. In the present, Billy Bob rushes to the trading post and informs BraveStarr about JB. As BraveStarr and 3030 examine the sparkles, BraveStarr recognizes the ion storm. He seeks the help of a shaman who notes that JB is in the past. Shaman promises he can help BraveStarr go to the past, but BraveStarr must return with JB within 2 hours. Shaman further appoints Fuzz to guard the time-traveling circle, which, if erased, will prevent BraveStarr from returning. Well, Fuzz might not be the right man, but at least he is dedicated. Meanwhile, 3030 loudly shares the incident with Handlebar, and of course, Zlarb's brother Blarg and his cronies here. They decide to get rid of Fuzz and erase the circle. Now, you must be wondering what's happening in the past. For one, BraveStarr follows the Ion Storm Trail to find JB, while the judge gets picked by a giant and gets restrained by giants who refuse to listen that she has come in peace. But no worries, an ancient prairie person, looking exactly like Fuzz, saves JB, and they run through the tunnel. A giant finds out and follows them through the tunnel. Back in the present, Blarg and his group attack Fuzz, but luckily 3030 has realized that Fuzz can be in trouble and arrives to help him. Returning to the past, the prairie person falls into a ditch, and JB stops the giant from pursuing by causing a rock slide. The premise of this story had influenced the spin-off series Bravo, which was about prairie people traveling 10,000 years back to stop Bitter Root from enslaving their ancestors. Coming back to our story, JB takes the injured ancient prairie person to his tribe, and they hail her. BraveStarr also arrives at the spot after using his powers to track her. He insists JB return with him, but JB first ensures the injured prairie person is all right. The prairie person also gives JB a ring before she leaves with BraveStarr. The marshal and the judge return just at the mark of 2 hours. JB captures the varmints, and later they tell the mayor about their adventure. However, Mayor Derringer still refuses to believe, but JB shows Fuzz the ring to prove that she is the legendary pretty lady and that it was all real.
Afraid it's all over, Vile.
Sunrise, sunset. The episode opens with outlaws Vile and Dreg roping in Dawn Traymond to a bank robbery at Fort Kirium. Dawn is an otherwise good guy who doesn't feel right about the robbery, but he is driven to the edge by poverty. Vile and Dreg try to rob Billy Bob of his hard-earned Kirium, but Billy Bob sounds the alarm. The criminals hit Billy Bob and knock him unconscious. Dawn gets concerned and tries to help Billy Bob, but he is stopped by Vile and Dreg. BraveStarr and 3030 appear at the sound of the alarm, but they are unable to follow the criminals as they find an unconscious Billy Bob. Meanwhile, at Doc Clayton's, Dawn's wife, Sheila, learns that she is pregnant. BraveStarr arrives at the doctor's with Billy Bob, and as Doc treats the patient, BraveStarr tells him about the criminals. BraveStarr also laments about Dawn being a part of the outlaw, and Sheila overhears. 9 months pass as Dawn remains in hiding with his teammates. He misses his wife and often contemplates going back, but the crooks remind him that BraveStarr will put him in jail and ask him to forget Sheila. Meanwhile, BraveStarr keeps visiting Sheila to learn if she knows anything about Dawn. However, she gets upset and angry as she just wants to be with her husband. Dawn's extremely ill father, Pops, also misses his son, but tries to make Sheila understand that Dawn should have confessed and rectified his life. As luck would have it, Dawn sends a message to Sheila through a prairie person, and soon Sheila and Pops take Molly's stratastage to visit Dawn at Stone Canyon. However, a group of dingoes chases after them and Molly has to speed up the carriage. Luckily, BraveStarr and 3030 are nearby and help Molly. Sheila gets angry and asks BraveStarr to leave, but he realizes that she must be going to visit her husband. On the other hand, Vile and Dreg get angry at Dawn for sending the letter and tie him up. They spy on the stratastage and try to get rid of them and the marshal with an avalanche. BraveStarr saves them from the avalanche, but Sheila suddenly feels the baby is coming. Vile and Dreg also shoot BraveStarr and 3030, knocking them out. They are taken hostage to the hut with Dawn tied up inside. However, this time, Dawn gets angry, and with the help of BraveStarr and Pops, they defeat the villains. But it's time for Sheila to give birth, and Molly helps her out, while Dawn volunteers to help. However, it doesn't look good for Pops, whose cough acts up. As Sheila gives birth to a son, Dawn shows the baby to his father. It's amazing that Pat Fraley has also done the baby voices for this episode. In a circle of life moment, Pops passes away after asking his son to follow an honest life. The group leaves after burying Pops Traymond, and Dawn promises to give himself up as BraveStarr promises that he will ask JB to serve him with a lighter sentence so that he can take care of his family.
Wait.
Perhaps you didn't hear me. I said, Mamu!
Call of the Wild. This episode starts off with Zarko and Wildchild having breakfast before Wildchild leaves for school. Zarko has become a doting father and pays utmost attention to his adopted son's education. He encourages Wildchild to attend school, even though some kids tease him, calling him a dingo boy. On his way, Wildchild witnesses BraveStarr and 3030 catch some notorious dingoes who were chasing Molly. He gets sad, and at school, when some kids tease him, Wild Child gets mad. Miss Jenny calms him down and sympathizes with Wild Child, but he still feels down. Wild Child remembers his time with the dingoes, and it turns out to be a very rough upbringing, although they treated him as their own. However, all of that is about to change when a flower blooms, spreading some kind of gas that makes people ill. Wild Child and BraveStarr turn out to be mysteriously immune to the illness. BraveStarr seeks Shaman's expertise, who explains that it is the fever flower illness and that Dingo Llama has the cure. Shaman further explains that the dingoes took Wild Child to Dingo Llama and fed him the medicine, while Shaman procured the cure for BraveStarr when he was young. Consider it as a vaccination, if you will. BraveStarr takes a cue and visits the dingoes in jail for help, but they hate the settlers and refuse to help. BraveStarr then takes Wild Child's help to find Dingo Llama. However, Wild Child warns that Dingo Llama doesn't like visitors, especially humans. Well, that's natural. Wild Child further claims that Dingo Llama has set various booby traps to maintain his privacy. So at first, BraveStarr and Wild Child get attacked by pom-pom spiders. But thanks to some tricks that Wild Child learned from the dingoes, they get rid of the creatures. Soon, the series of booby traps starts tiring out BraveStarr, and he uses the speed of Puma to trigger them all at once. As they finally meet Dingo Llama, he claims to have forgotten about a few of the traps. He refuses to share his medicine and even gets disappointed with Wild Child for turning soft. But as Dingo Llama tries to attack them, he trips in his own trap and hangs upside down. BraveStarr and Wild Child save Dingo Llama, and he realizes that one should also help those whom they don't like when the time comes. Later, Doc Clayton feeds the medicine to all the children, but the bullies still tease Wild Child. However, this time, he doesn't care and ignores them, while everyone else joins him in laughing out loud.
Tex Hex guilty as charged.
Why did you do it, Hulk?
Tex but no Hex. It seems like a peaceful day at Fort Kirium, but not for long when BraveStarr and 3030 are called into duty as Molly's Stratastage gets chased by Tex Hex and the Carrion Bunch. BraveStarr stops Tex Hex while his lackeys escape, but Tex Hex is a slippery fellow who vanishes and teases the Marshal. However, in an odd turn of events, Stampede takes away Tex Hex and berates him for deviating from the plan and not capturing Shaman. Stampede feels it's not enough and takes away Tex Hex's power to teach him a lesson, without Tex realizing. Tex conjures a plan and sends Scuzz to dig through, while he and the rest charge at Fort Kirium. Scuzz makes a boo-boo and gets caught by Fuzz. It alerts BraveStarr, and 3030 puts the town in lockdown. Tex Hex charges, but only he gets inside, while Thunderstick and Cactus Head leave. BraveStarr and Tex Hex have a showdown, with the Marshal winning. The people also discover that Tex has lost his powers, and BraveStarr fulfills his dreams of catching Tex Hex by the collar. As Tex is put in jail, he realizes Stampede took his powers. Hogtie brings Tex the news that there will be a trial, and Tex ensures that by a computer glitch or otherwise, Hogtie is a juror. Judge JB also fulfills her dream of putting Tex Hex on trial, but a single not guilty can let Tex go scot-free, so she gets worried. Marshal BraveStarr eventually starts the trial by providing a long list of charges against Tex Hex. This is probably one of the rare episodes where BraveStarr doesn't use any of his spirit powers. It also contains several callbacks and central characters from past episodes. The witnesses that appear are Billy Bob, whose anecdote follows a flashback from the episode BraveStarr and the Law, followed by Rourke, Wazella, and Maris Wu, recounting the crimes of Tex Hex from past episodes. All the jurors find him guilty, and before Hogtie goes in Tex Hex's favor, BraveStarr appeals to his conscience. As all the jurors find Tex guilty, Judge JB rules that Tex will be sent to a prison planet. Unfortunately, Stampede returns Tex's powers and takes him back, although Tex would have preferred the prison planet.
Rancor is stronger!
Space Zoo. Fuzz has gone to meet his parents when Chief Tussle and a few Prairie kids visit him with news about something strange in the desert. It turns out to be a space warp that pulls Fuzz inside. Chief Tussle informs the Marshal, and BraveStarr takes 3030 to examine the portal. BraveStarr being brave enough, asks 3030 to stay behind and then jumps right into the space warp. He turns up in what seems to be a spaceship, while somewhere inside the spaceship, Fuzz tries to escape from his cage. BraveStarr eventually finds Fuzz, but there are several other sample species locked up in the space zoo. BraveStarr gets attacked by a security robot, who seems to be afraid of the zoo owner Bronco. BraveStarr destroys the robot and frees Fuzz, but notes that they need to find where the other creatures are from. Meanwhile, in New Texas, everyone gets worried as 3030 can't detect BraveStarr or Fuzz. 3030 even finds that the space warp is weakening, which means BraveStarr and Fuzz must return fast. Back in the spaceship zoo, BraveStarr and Fuzz encounter two more security robots and subdue them by tying them up. The security robots are amazed to find that BraveStarr doesn't want to make them slaves. BraveStarr finds a video of Bronco kidnapping the creatures and realizes a lonely fellow. Hard to say how BraveStarr came to that realization, but our guess is that Bronco wants to be a YouTuber. Anyway, BraveStarr and Bronco fight, which takes them tumbling through the space warp. The security robots promise to help Fuzz in sending them back to New Texas and guide Fuzz in using the console. They also promise to free the rest of the creatures. As BraveStarr, Bronco and Fuzz return to New Texas, they tackle Bronco and teach them about friendship, love, and hugs. Fuzz asks Bronco to let go of the other creatures and agrees to be Bronco's friend. Fuzz's mummy also adopts Bronco as a son, and before it all gets too emotional, let's move on to the next one.
No! 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 No!
Tex's Terrible Night. Finally, a Christmas special of BraveStarr, and also the last to air in 1987. It's Christmas Eve, and BraveStarr and 3030 are preparing to leave for Iron Mountains. JB is visibly upset, and in Christmas spirit, we see JB and BraveStarr share a longing hug. Scuzz finds out and informs Tex Hex, who decides to attack Fort Kirium the next day. However, to his surprise, the shaman appears inside Hexagon and asks Tex Hex to cancel his plan. As Tex Hex refuses, Shaman takes Tex on a ride through the past. It appears Tex was a citizen of Earth and worked alongside his business partner, Angus McBride. Shaman then shows Tex's conversation with his fiancée, Ursula, who asks him not to leave for New Texas in search of Kirium. Shaman then shows Tex how he became a selfish master, using the Prairie people as slaves, and also betrays Angus. The story is a take on A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and the episode uses Christmas songs. The memories don't have much effect on Tex, who likes being evil and doesn't want to be his old self again. Shaman also shows Tex how his ship crashed, and Stampede could sense his evil, turning Tex into a sorcerer and his servant. However, it's not all, as Shaman shows Tex, that Ursula came to New Texas and was on a strato coach when it got attacked by Tex Hex and the Carrion Bunch. In the present, Ursula is married to stratocoach driver Joshua, and they are planning on visiting Fort Kirium on Christmas. At last, Shaman shows Tex Hex the future, where he has died, and Stampede's plan no longer involves Tex. Tex Hex gets afraid and panics, but Shaman has vanished, and it's time for the attack. Tex Hex joins the gang, but can't risk Ursula getting hurt, and so he attacks Stampede, forcing the evil spirit to retreat. It alerts the residents, and they switch on the fortress mode to defend themselves. So this Christmas episode is all about new love and forgotten love. BraveStarr and 3030 return the next day and get the startling news, while Ursula and Joshua seem fine. Running wild, BraveStarr and 3030 wait in the desert as they have received news about dingoes chasing after Molly. The marshal and his horse soon witness the chase and start catching the dingoes one by one. However, 3030 gets hurt in his knee and BraveStarr takes him to Iron Arm's repair station. Iron Arm tells BraveStarr that 3030 will require 2 days to recover, which doesn't really suit the Equestroid. Meanwhile, Angus McBride has travelled to New Cheyenne, where something or someone is destroying the aquapods, which could lead to water scarcity in New Texas soon enough. Angus relays the information to BraveStarr, who sets forth for New Cheyenne. The destruction of the aquapods has riled up the local farmers, and Caleb Lunason intends to take things into his own hands. Local people Caleb and Will take Angus to meet Jed O'Rourke, whose daughter Amy has a pet ape cat. While it is not the first time we encounter ape cats, this is the first time they get prominent roles. Earlier, in one of the stories that Handlebar told the kids, BraveStarr made a water fountain for ape cats. BraveStarr reaches the aquapod farm and uses his optivisor to find a large ape cat destroying the aquapods. BraveStarr tries to catch it, but the ape cat vanishes. At the same time, Amy insists her pet ape cat called Rascal is young, but is shocked to find him missing. BraveStarr comes across Rascal, but his paw is stuck in a force field trap. BraveStarr helps out Rascal and realizes he is not the one to attack. In the meantime, Caleb instigates the locals into finding and killing Rascal. They refuse to listen to Jed and Amy, who don't believe Rascal will cause such damage. As the mob approaches the aquapod farm, BraveStarr appears with Rascal on his back. Rascal and Amy reunite, but Caleb and the mob want to kill Rascal. BraveStarr protests and takes down the mob. Just then, the other adult and ferocious ape cat arrive at the spot. The people flee, asking the marshal to take care of the beast, and so he does. However, Amy and BraveStarr realize it's Rascal's mother, who has come all the way looking for her cub. And since ape cats are from wetlands, she had damaged the aquapods. Amy lets go of Rascal with a heavy heart, and BraveStarr returns to Iron Arm's repair station to find that 3030 has recovered. 3030 goes camping. The shape-shifting Dingo Dan and Moribund escape from a prison planet and get chased by the intergalactic force. However, they manage to fake the destruction of their ship and reach New Texas to get their hands on a treasure trove of Kirium. In Fort Kirium, Digger Knox arrives at the marshal's office about someone stealing his laser drill, and BraveStarr leaves. But 3030 has to accompany the kids to a camping trip. 3030 is not keen on the activity and makes Fuzz join him. It proves way more dangerous than facing Tex Hex, as 3030 has to manage a bunch of boys seeking adventure. Unfortunately for them, the boys turn up at the place, where Moribund, Dingo Dan, Hogtie and Scuzz await the arrival of their partner Iguana, who is tasked to steal mining equipment. The bandits plan on digging up the treasure that's apparently buried there. As 3030, Fuzz and the girls in the group set out looking for the boys, they too get captured and put in a cell together. Do you know the title track for BraveStarr is actually A Family Affair? Well, to elaborate, it's narrated by Filmation founder Lou Scheimer, whereas the backing vocals are performed by his daughter Erica. Instead of a typical song, the narration is quite fitting, since the episodes are rather standalone. Anyway, BraveStarr captures Iguana with the stolen item and calls 3030 to warn him. Thanks to a radio made by the boys, 3030 is able to speak with the marshal and tells him about the bandits. Hogtie notices and takes away the kids, along with Sarah Jane. BraveStarr takes a turbo mule to arrive at the ghost town of Shiloh and follows the instructions given by 3030s to find them. BraveStarr frees 3030 and Fuzz from the cage and confronts the bandits, but the bandits send the kids in a mining cart through the mines so that BraveStarr follows. BraveStarr asks his partners to save the kids as he chases after the bandits. 3030 saves the kids from a massive accident and brings them out. He also threatens Hogtie to drop an anvil on Scuzz. But don't worry, it ain't Roadrunner. Inside the mine, Moribund and Dingo Dan try to bury BraveStarr in a rock slide, but BraveStarr uses his spirit power to get free and chase after the criminals. This causes another rock slide to close the door of the mining cave, but BraveStarr escapes with the captured bandits. The Haunted Shield. As a bunch of dingoes attack the Prairie settlement, the Prairie people panic, and Chief Tussle calls BraveStarr and 3030 for help. The dingoes make more noise than necessary to make it sound like they are plundering. This is, however, a distraction, so that Thunderstick and Scuzz can loot the weapon warehouse. But Shaman appears and stops them from leaving with the loot, while BraveStarr saves the Prairie people. Chief Tussle feels embarrassed that they have to always rely on Marshal, 3030 and Shaman, whereas Shaman tells BraveStarr that it's high time the Prairie people learns to protect themselves. He recollects a memory of when young BraveStarr wouldn't let go of a deer offspring, but had to at the insistence of the Shaman. The deer turned out to be a majestic fellow that can protect itself. Meanwhile, Scuzz and Thunderstick stick meet Stampede with the mirror-like stone that they found while escaping. Stampede recognizes it as the haunted shield of Specterius, which can reflect back the power to the person who attacked. On this note, BraveStarr in 3D is also a comic book that started production in January 1987. Although it has only 2 volumes, it could have included more lore to expand the universe. As planned, Stampede tricks Shaman into fighting a battle and uses the haunted shield to send Shaman far, far away. BraveStarr realizes that Shaman is in trouble and gears up to save him. But once again, the villains try to take away the Prairie people as slaves. BraveStarr saves them and leaves to find Shaman, while Chief Tussle asks his people to find a way to fend for themselves. So when the Stampede's group attacks, the Prairie people work uniformly to cloud their vision and defeat the villains, but the Prairie people are still caught. BraveStarr also saves Shaman and takes him to Star Peak to recover by sitting beside the fire. Shaman makes a plan to defeat Stampede, and the next day he challenges the cattle spirit. Shaman vanishes in a confused Stampede, which makes him drop the shield. As the shield breaks, Shaman sends the Stampede far away. BraveStarr saves the Prairie people and catches the criminals. He also appreciates the little ones catching the criminals.
What's happening to them?
Ship of No Return. The episode starts with BraveStarr and his crew, along with the McBrides, awaiting the arrival of a Kirium freighter, which has JB's elder brother, Kevin McBride, as the captain. It seems Kevin and Angus might be a bit estranged, but it's been years, and Angus is both excited and nervous to meet his son. However, when the freighter door doesn't open on its own, BraveStarr pries it open. The freighter appears empty, and 3030 scans it to find they are the only living creatures. As the group enters the inner sanctum of the spaceship, a large screen comes to life, and somebody called Archon speaks from the screen. Archon is rude, selfish, and has a god complex. When Angus demands to know about Kevin, Archon scans Angus's mind and conjures Kevin. Captain McBride confesses he blacked out before reaching New Texas, and just like him, the rest of the crew vanished. As Archon refuses to comply, BraveStarr breaks open the doors, and the group tries to escape, while Archon controls the ship to chase after them and stop them from escaping. The force field in the ship further weakens BraveStarr, preventing him from summoning the power of animal spirits. In flashback, a kid, BraveStarr, tries to move a rock, crushing the shaman's foot. The shaman asks him to use the power of his heart to find his strength. In the present, BraveStarr finds strength within himself and breaks free. Kevin gets anxious about finding his crew and wants to help BraveStarr, but his father gets worried, which leads to an argument between the duos. When 3030 shoots at the power beam, the group is transported to Archon's ship, and they find the freighter crew in some sort of deep sleep as they are being studied. Archon reveals he doesn't plan on letting the group and the crew go. In fact, he wants to destroy this galaxy, as it is too contaminated by human greed and violence. Well, there's no arguing about that, but as BraveStarr points out, there's also love, kindness, and care. Archon doesn't believe and sends monsters to hunt them, while Kevin and Angus finally start to make up as they assume their end is near. The power of love weakens the monsters, and Archon realizes his mistake. Wasn't that too easy? Anyway, Archon returns BraveStarr's crew and Kevin's crew to their freighter, promising to come back 50,000 years later to check up on them. The little lie that grew. BraveStarr finds out that Deputy Fuzz has developed a new skill, which is making bird calls and mimicking the Marshal's voice. Their fun and banter end when they find the Nicely house on fire, and the Nicely family is tied to the front of the house. BraveStarr, Fuzz, and 3030 save the family, and BraveStarr is able to catch Mick and Buster. But Dingo, Dan, and Weasel get away, with Dingo Dan ready to take revenge. As BraveStarr takes the family to Fort Kirium, he suggests John Nicely can work as a jailer and live there with his family, while his daughter Posy asks for a doll she has lost. Mrs. Nicely scolds Posy for losing it and promises to get her one on her birthday. As the family settles down, John asks his wife to get soap and razors so that he can shave. Mrs. Nicely takes Posy to the trading post for shopping, while Dingo Dan and Weasel lurk nearby to find an opportunity they can use to bust out their mates. The opportunity comes soon enough when Dingo Dan and Weasel notice Posy stealing a doll. They approach her and sweet-talk her, but threaten to tell her parents about the doll if she doesn't steal the jail keys from her dad. Posey agrees, and when John goes to shave, she takes the key and gives it to the criminal. Dingo Dan and Weasel bust in, revealing to the Niceleys how their daughter betrayed them. The gang of criminals ties up the family and asks BraveStarr to meet at Hangman's Hill as they leave with Posey. Fuzz has been sleeping on the job and wakes up, but is still unable to lay even a scratch on the villains. BraveStarr arrives a bit late and realizes he must oblige Dingo Dan. Upon reaching Hangman's Hill, BraveStarr follows Dingo Dan's instructions and leaves his gun. However, as BraveStarr starts climbing, Dingo Dan starts shooting at BraveStarr. Dingo Dan promises to let go of the kid if BraveStarr promises not to chase them for a month. BraveStarr makes Fuzz mimic his voice as he secretly climbs the hill from another side and takes down villains, rescuing Posey. It seems Posey has learned a lesson, and BraveStarr remembers when he too stole a pony from Little Eagle and returned it later with his own bow and arrow as a reminder that he won't do it again.
Thinking, feeling about this.
Sherlock Holmes. In the 23rd century, Part 1. The episode begins with Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty wrestling at the top of Reichenbach Falls, while Dr. Watson warns Sherlock not to slip and fall. Holmes is found by Regillian Dr. Watson, who has much resemblance to Dr. Watson. Later, a news report announces that Dr. Watson has teamed up with Sherlock Holmes's great descendant, Yard Agent Mycroft Holmes. Sherlock now lives in 2 to 21B Baker Street and quickly discovers he can produce an electrical charge from the tip of his finger. This comes in handy when Holmes catches 3 boys trying to pickpocket. Suddenly, a carriage full of people starts shooting, and Sherlock and Watson save the kids, while Mycroft appears with a large gun and takes them out. Sherlock and Watson then visit the museum, where BraveStarr appears seeking their help. The marshal in question tells them that he is looking for a recluse and odd alien boy called Fleeder, who escaped as a stowaway in a Kirium freighter that was recently stolen. Mr. Fogg, a spirit-like character, breaks into the museum and kidnaps Sherlock. Mycroft Holmes, BraveStarr, and Dr. Watson also follow, but Mycroft accidentally stuns BraveStarr, whereas Watson trips on. However, thanks to the little kids who were earlier trying to pickpocket, they are able to stop the monster, but doesn't forget to steal Sherlock's wallet again. Afterward, Mikey introduces Sherlock to Chief Inspector Kitty Lestrade, who is another descendant of Scotland Yard Lestrade. Kitty probably has a crush on Holmes, but also brings foreboding news about the thugs being released on bail bought by Kirium. To get more answers, the group questions Mr. Fogg, who is currently stuck in a container. As everyone bullies Mr. Fogg, he confesses that he was ordered to kill BraveStarr by an unknown person, who provided him with a lot of Kirium. The group travels to Twig Street for an investigation, where they are further thrown down a shaft. Sherlock Holmes. In the 23rd century, Part 2. Sherlock Holmes, BraveStarr, and the rest of the group find themselves in what seems to be an underground dungeon. BraveStarr further notes, Fleeder is kept in one of the dungeon cabins and breaks the wall to free him. Fleeder hugs BraveStarr and, in a sing-songy voice, shares that his song cannot reach his parents and that he went into the freighter to find Mommy and Daddy. Sherlock and Dr. Watson notice that Fleeder speaks in rhymes, and as Sherlock examines the room, he realizes everything is orchestrated by Professor Moriarty, who has somehow come to the 23rd century as well. Just then, Moriarty bursts in and claims to have read a newspaper that came from the future and used some sort of cryo-sleep mechanism to sleep for 365 years. However, now he wants to use the hypno-music gang and Fleeder's voice to hypnotize the people of Earth. Moriarty takes Fleeder, Marshal BraveStarr, and Mycroft as he leaves to enact his evil plan. Sherlock and Dr. Watson are left to fend for themselves and manage to get a dirigible to fly to Paris, from where they suspect Moriarty will enact his plans. Atop the Eiffel Tower, Moriarty forces Fleeder to sing the song that puts everyone under hypnosis. Well, except the ones in the dirigible. Sherlock Holmes and crew arrive as they rescue BraveStarr and Mycroft, while Sherlock confronts Moriarty directly. The pickpocket boys who helped Sherlock get rid of the hypno-music group Discord, and Sherlock encourages Fleeder to sing to his parents. The music undoes the hypnosis and reaches Fleeder's parents, who turn out to be energy beings of the cosmos. As Moriarty tries to disrupt the transmission, Sherlock uses his newfound powers to help with the broadcast. Fleeder finally turns into a similar similar being after shedding his previous form and reunites with his parents, who, in turn, help in curing Sherlock after he is power drained. Sherlock reunites with his group and informs them that Moriarty is stuck to the Eiffel Tower. He decides to continue working in the 23rd century with the pickpocket boys, while it's time for Marshall to return to New Texas. New Texas Blues. The air in New Texas is charged up as a spaceship arrives with all the bands that are going to perform in the Galactic Music Contest. Judge JB also leaves to practice as she is going to perform. However, evil doesn't take a break in New Texas as Stampede chastises Tex Hex for his continuous failure and gives him a guitar called Black Widow, whose music is supposed to cause chaos and destruction. While preparations for the music contest are underway, Tex Hex instructs Vipra and Scuzz to turn the audience against each other, so the BraveStarr is distracted enough. BraveStarr and his partners note that managing such an event with so few staff is a challenge in itself, and soon the first band comes on stage to perform. Scuzz is the first one to instigate a fight between a human and an alien in the audience. The sound of the argument reaches BraveStarr, and he goes down to stop them. BraveStarr starts getting an idea that everything might not be all right, so he keeps a lookout. He soon spots Vipra trying to attack another couple in the audience. Meanwhile, contestant Johnny Bluestar grows restless as he doesn't like the sound of his guitar, and although his partner Mila tries to make him understand, he is too ambitious to see what's right. Tex takes his chance, as when Johnny's guitar falls and breaks, Tex approaches him with Black Widow. Johnny loves the sound of the new guitar, but fails to notice its ill effect. Mila notices how flowers wilt at the sound of the guitar, and insists Johnny not to use it, but to no avail. BraveStarr and 3030 rightly guess that Tex Hex is trying to distract them, and so they investigate backstage. But JB assures them everything is all right. When JB performs, and BraveStarr is almost hypnotized, until 3030 reminds him of the task at hand. Finally, it's Johnny's turn, and the first note from his guitar turns the audience against each other. Johnny refuses to let his music have a negative effect on people, but Tex Hex takes away the guitar and tries to use it on the people. On the other hand, BraveStarr asks Johnny to continue playing with his old guitar. As the rest of the bands and JB join Johnny, the music starts healing the audience, and Tex Hex's guitar blows up. Tex escapes before BraveStarr can catch him. It turns out neither JB nor Johnny won, nor Johnny still wants to be a star and has a fan in Fuzz. Jeremiah and the Prairie people. Sandstorm and Thunderstick watch an alien called Jeremiah walking through the desert. Jeremiah carries the map to the biggest Kirium reserve. He sends giant robotic sand crabs to attack them. Fortunately, BraveStarr notices and rushes to save him and finds Jeremy unconscious. BraveStarr also gets rid of the robot sand crabs, while they find the treasure map Crystal lying beside him. Fuzz suggests taking Jeremiah to the nearby Prairie settlement. A blind Prairie person called Munchie takes care of Jeremiah, and he wakes up. Munchie gives Jeremiah the treasure map crystal, but when BraveStarr asks Jeremiah if he is keeping anything, Jeremiah refuses to disclose it. Jeremiah distrusts people and believes in the motto, every man, in this case, creature for himself. Believing in the same motto, Sandstorm is not one to take a setback. He asks Thunderstick to attack Molly's stratastage to lure out BraveStarr and 30 When Molly calls for help, the Marshal and 30 leave, but wonder if it's all just a trap. They find and stop Thunderstick from attacking Molly, who so far has been rather capable of fending herself. Back in the Prairie settlement, Chief Tussle gives Jeremiah a turbo mule to leave the place, as Jeremiah complained to Munchie that he feels stuck. Jeremiah gets overwhelmed by the kindness, but then Sandstorm breaks in right at the moment. Sandstorm demands the treasure map crystal and threatens to crush Munchie. So to save Munchie's life, Jeremiah gives up the map. Chief Tussle signals BraveStarr, and they learn about the treasure map from Jeremiah. They follow Sandstorm, but the villain buries BraveStarr in the ground and blows away his partners. The hero still makes his way through a mining track and stops Sandstorm before he finds the treasure. At last, BraveStarr helps Jeremiah find the mine of pure Kirium, and Jeremiah can easily be the richest on the planet. However, he has found something more precious, which is his friendship with Munchie. Munchie asks Jeremiah to stay with them, and Jeremiah decides to distribute the treasure among all the Prairie people in the settlement. The Ballad of Sarah Jane. Wild Child and his friend Brad witness Krang soldiers taking over a Fooftar ship and inform it to BraveStarr and 3030. The Equestroid has further upgraded his cannon gun with a turbo booster, and Judge JB thinks it's a danger. 3030 assures that he has installed an override system that will prevent it from blowing up. BraveStarr and 3030 run to the spot and the scared Krangs leave. But Foofta person Omish insists on no shooting as the Fooftas believe in non-violence. BraveStarr and 3030 take their Eagle Fighter to find the Krang, but the plane gets shot and crashes, with 3030 losing Sarah Jane. BraveStarr and 3030 return to Fort Kirium, and an ungrateful Omish comments that he didn't want them to risk their lives in saving the Fooftars. Now this sounds almost suicidal. Anyway, the biggest worry is the loss of Sarah Jane, and BraveStarr notes that the weapon in the wrong hands may mean disaster. Omish's son Gurmy volunteers to help them with the search, but Omish stops him. When Gurmy notices the Fort Kirium children playing, he goes to join them. However, once again, Gurmy's overbearing father prevents him from playing games related to weapons and fighting. Gurmy accidentally switches on the turbo booster as he tries to figure out the weapon. Meanwhile, BraveStarr and 30/30 examine the crash site to look for Sarah Janey and instead find that the override mechanism has fallen off. BraveStarr uses the ear of a wolf to listen to the beeping sound of Sarah Jane's turbo and finds out that it's with Gurmy. BraveStarr and 30/30 seek Shaman's advice, who reminds BraveStarr of the time he got spat by a spitting scorpion just because he wanted to show it to his friend. BraveStarr deduces that Gurmy must be showing it to the other kids. Omish also tells JB about Gurmy being missing and looking for Sarah Jane. Sure enough, Gurmy not only tests Sarah Jane, but also brings the kids to show it. Wild Child recognizes the gun and leaves, as it's too dangerous. He informs it to BraveStarr, who rushes to Gurmy, takes over the turbo booster, and throws it into the air, where it explodes. Gurmy reunites with Omish, and for once 30/30 is relieved that trouble is over.
JB, I'm positive those two are involved in those robberies.
Brother's Keeper. The episode opens on Doc Clayton treating Charlie, who is infected with the strain 25 space virus. He needs immediate medication, which needs to be sourced from another galaxy medical center. BraveStarr assures Charlie's wife Stella that he will get the serum for Charlie, but before that, he rides 30/30 to save Molly, who is attacked by robbers Billy and Bart. BraveStarr uses his powers to hear the conversation between brothers Billy and Bart, which makes him sure they are the ones to rob the strong box from Molly's stratastage. BraveStarr arrests the brothers, but Judge JB lets them go due to the lack of evidence. This leads to quite an argument between JB and BraveStarr. Letting them go backfires when Billy, Bart, and a group of dingoes again attack the stratastage. Later, BraveStarr and JB are at the trading post, again arguing with each other, when Billy and Bart decide to tease BraveStarr more. They also pick up Fuzz, and it's still humiliating. BraveStarr decides to follow the crooks, and JB insists on joining him, as she wants to keep an eye on him. Marshall goes after Bart, while JB goes after Billy. However, when Bart corners Marshall, he falls from the cliff, and BraveStarr saves Bart. The man confesses to BraveStarr that he is tired of robbing and hiding from the law. On the other hand, the dingoes and Billy catch JB. Meanwhile, BraveStarr lets Bart go and convince his brother to surrender. Whereas BraveStarr starts looking for JB, Charlie's condition also worsens, and Stella insists on finding the serum fast. JB is found tied up at the back of large rocks, while it appears that Billy has ensured the rock slides take down the Marshal. In the meantime, Billy and the gang hide in the steam flats where Bart meets his brother. BraveStarr uses his power and wit to drench the gang with hot water. Most of the dingoes get caught, except for Billy and Bart. However, Billy is disappointed to see they have robbed only a bottle of serum. Bart mentions it's an emergency medication for an extremely ill patient, but Billy finds it a lucrative ransom and ties up his brother for Marshall to find. Billy wants to trade the medication for the two dingo prisoners, and so BraveStarr goes to Stella to get her permission. BraveStarr promises to get back the serum, but also points out that he can't give in to such demands. Stella agrees, and BraveStarr convinces Bart to find his brother, but Billy throws the bottle of serum. BraveStarr catches the bottle, and Billy thinks Bart betrayed him. However, Bart only did so to improve Billy's life. Charlie's life is also saved with the timely administration of the medication, and at last, JB and BraveStarr make up as they plan to get dinner together.
Save you, Hannis!
BraveStarr and the Empress. As BraveStarr and Fuzz test rock grabbers, the Marshal gets a call from the Galactic President Garnaff, who wants Marshal BraveStarr to be the security escort for Empress Nadia as she goes to have peace talks with Krangs. BraveStarr is supposed to join the Empress as her ship lands in New Texas for refueling. However, something else is amiss, as the Empress General Crux and Prime Minister Zax plan to capture her and prevent the peace talks. Crux reprograms the guard robots and signals them to capture the Empress, but BraveStarr arrives to save the Empress. Despite witnessing his usefulness, the conceited and prejudiced Empress doesn't want a human like BraveStarr accompanying her and relies on her general. BraveStarr refuses to listen and joins them anyway, with Fuzz in tow. Fuzz even comes in useful as he overhears the General and Prime Minister discussing their plan. When Fuzz relays the information to BraveStarr and the Empress, she refuses to believe, but General Crux and Prime Minister Zax soon reveal their true nature. According to the series Bible, there was a chance of a crossover with He-Man, who was supposed to show up in young BraveStarr's life. It's an opportunity lost since nothing such materialized. Moving on, BraveStarr manages to capture General Crux, but Prime Minister Zax gets away and sends all the robot guards after BraveStarr. The Empress, BraveStarr and Fuzz leave the ship in an escape pod, but Crux and Zax still try to pull them with a tractor beam. BraveStarr removes that rear of the ship, but the escape pod crashes on Wild Vantia. As BraveStarr, Empress Nadia and Fuzz are forced to walk to the venue, they are attacked by a carnivorous plant, and Fuzz comes to the rescue. BraveStarr does the rest, but Nadia finally recognizes Fuzz as Brave. Crux and Zax try to put BraveStarr to sleep by spraying him with Folian sleep pods, but the Marshal is able to resist their effect and throws the same pods at Zax and Crux instead. Nadia finally realizes that all alien races must be respected and carries forward the same idea to the peace talk meeting, which eventually ends her feud with the Krang world.
It is too late!
Night of the Bronco Tank. Once again, Marshal BraveStarr has defeated Tex Hex and his group of dingoes. He and the rest are well aware that Tex Hex will come back to haunt them, but the situation is a little different. Stampede has lost all his patience and takes matters into his own hands as he creates an evil machine of destruction called the Bronco Tank. As Stampede releases the Bronco Tank to attack Fort Kirium, BraveStarr wakes up from a nightmare and the horrible sound of the animal. Shaman appears in his room and warns BraveStarr to evacuate the people and then take on the monster. 3030 also bursts into BraveStarr's room, and before the duo can take any action, the Bronco Tank starts its rampage. Just like Bronco Tank, 3030 is also a techno horse, but hails from a cybernetic race, while in the series Bible, he is a robot that likes ordering new parts for himself. BraveStarr uses some pipes to trip Bronco Tank and to slow it down, while he instructs the local settlers to leave in their caravans. However, it's not enough. As BraveStarr ensures, the miners and their families are also safe, so he contacts Angus and Karen, who prepare a temporary refuge for the people. Since the Bronco Tank has again started approaching the town, BraveStarr trips it by using his lasso. The next morning, BraveStarr orders Handlebar to put the town in lockdown. Commander Kane and JB try to shoot lasers at it, but only anger the robot. At last, Shaman arrives and sends back the Bronco Tank to Stampede. Stampede increases the Bronco Tank's power, and it returns to Star Peak, but Shaman summons the power of Star Peak to send it back. However, this time, Bronco Tank refuses to listen to Stampede and attacks the devilish villain. Shaman warns BraveStarr that he needs to stop the Bronco Tank, as after finishing Stampede, it will most certainly turn its attention to Fort Kirium. BraveStarr, 3030, and Commander Kane arrive at Hexagon to stop the monster. Shaman also recovers from the last session and summons the animal spirits to help his protege. He appears physically at Hexagon to save Stampede from Bronco Tank. Commander Kane's laser cannon further drains the Bronco tank of its powers, but an ungrateful stampede attacks the now weak shaman. Eventually, BraveStarr throws the laser cannon at Stampede to take him down.
It's collapsing.
Nomad is an island. It's Queen Singlish's 1000th birthday, and she wants everything to be perfect in her floating piece of island. Her only subjects, two miserable creatures called Grovel and Whimper, do exactly what their name denotes, which is a bit obnoxious, but the Queen is still not satisfied. She wants a big, strong horse and a bunch of slaves as a birthday present. So where should she get it? Well, of course, New Texas, which is just nearby. As the island approaches New Texas, it detects the Prairie people as perfect slaves and 3030 as the perfect horse for the present. Grovel and Whimper shoot at Marshal BraveStarr and abduct 3030 along with a few Prairie people. Although Grovel and Whimper are dedicated to Queen Singlish, they don't feel good about abducting and using people as slaves. But the Queen doesn't care about their feelings. 3030 and the Prairie people protest against the abduction, but the Queen sprays sleeping dust on 3030 and orders her minions to take away Sarah Jane before restraining him. As the island floats towards Fort Kirium, BraveStarr calls on the speed of Puma to warn the people of Fort Kirium. As the town goes into defensive mode, Grovel and Whimper also start shooting. BraveStarr finds that just shooting at the castle is useless and tries to reach out to 3030, who wakes up in his cell. BraveStarr asks 3030 to keep Queen Singlish busy while he tries to infiltrate the castle. When Grovel and Whimper take 3030 to Queen Singlish, she complains that the horse is bipedal and asks him to transform into his quadrupedal form, but he refuses. 3030 talks about personal freedom, and the Prairie people also make faces at Queen Singlish, which makes Grovel and Whimper realize that they must also fight for their own rights. As the situation turns chaotic, BraveStarr reaches the islands and finds its power source. He disables it, which causes the island to crash on New Texas soil. Queen Singlish tries to zap the Prairie people with her magical stick, which makes 3030 angry, and he breaks free. Queen Singlish's magical scepter is actually an English riding crop, which makes the scene funnier. As Grovel and Whimper turn against their queen, BraveStarr finally breaks in and rescues the Prairie people as he and 3030 jump off the castle. Queen Singlish also finds that her magical swaggle stick has broken, and this means there will be some changes in power in the castle. The episode ends with BraveStarr flinging the island back to where it came from. The blockade. As BraveStarr and 3030 return from seeing BraveStarr's childhood friend David, he witnesses something strange happening in the space near New Texas, which by now shouldn't sound so strange. Anyway, a block of asteroids is attracting all other asteroids, which is covering up the New Texas sky. The sunlight can't get in, and neither does a galactic freighter that was supposed to pick up Warden Corwin and Krang Wizard Clawtooth, who is supposed to be taken to prison. JB also observes that without any freighter arriving with supplies, the residents of New Texas will die of hunger. BraveStarr decides to destroy or remove the asteroids and takes the Warden's shuttle to finish the job. 3030 is left to guard the prisoner, but Clawtooth hypnotizes 3030 and zaps him. Meanwhile, the citizens of Fort Kirium work together to amass all the food supplies, and JB points out that they must ration the food so that they can survive till BraveStarr finds a solution. Clawtooth overhears and seeks out Stampede, who is revealed to be the one causing the asteroid buildup. Clawtooth promises to take away the food supply in exchange for Stampede providing him asylum, and Stampede agrees. In space, BraveStarr finds asteroids sticking to the shuttle and ventures outside to remove them, and notices they are all magnetized. He also notices the asteroid that's attracting all other asteroids and forms a plan to get rid of it. Back at Fort Kirium, Clawtooth sneaks up on Fuzz and zaps him. On the other hand, JB discovers 3030 recovering from being hit, and they both realize that the food supply is in danger. They find Fuzz unconscious, and JB rides 3030 to go after the food reserve. They notice Clawtooth taking the food supply to Hexagon, and when Stampede materializes, JB and 3030 try taking the food supply back. The tug of war accidentally almost strangles Claw 2, while 3030's strength is not enough, so JB calls BraveStarr for assistance. BraveStarr uses a missile to send the asteroid plummeting into New Texas and destroying Hexagon, which also takes care of Stampede for a while. As the New Texas skies also clear up, 3030 and JB take the food supply back, while 3030 waits to settle scores with the Krang magician.
It's BraveStarr.
No drums, no trumpets. As Molly arrives with Kirium, Paco, a former lawman, and his daughter Michelle disembark from the stratastage. As Paco carries 2 dolls, Thunderstick and Scuzz make fun of him. They try to trip him, and Michelle asks her father to protest, but a past incident has made him docile, and he no longer carries a gun. When Thunderstick and Scuzz hook a turbo mule to Paco, BraveStarr saves him, while Fuzz and 3030 get the crooks. Paco tells BraveStarr that he wants to start farming, and BraveStarr takes him to a faraway but unclaimed valley. Paco calls in Peace Valley and sets up his entrapments for farming. However, news travels to Hexagon, and Sandstorm wants Paco gone, as he considers the valley his own piece of land. The next day, as Michelle works on the farm, she discovers that her father has still kept his Neutra laser. Meanwhile, Sandstorm and Cactus Head arrive as Sandstorm tries to blow away Paco. BraveStarr and 3030 come to their rescue as he blows away the villains with a makeshift fan. BraveStarr also gives Paco his claim, which is issued by Judge JB. However, this doesn't dampen Sandstorm's spirits as he returns to threaten Paco, and instead takes the interfering Michelle hostage. At this point, it's the same recycled script, with a change here and there. But we are also almost at the end of our video, which means only a few stories left to tell. Paco decides to confront Sandstorm at Badlands and takes out his Neutra laser before riding off to Hexagon. BraveStarr hears the sound of Paco's turbo mule and follows it. BraveStarr and 3030 join Paco in rescuing Michelle. BraveStarr uses his Optivisor and finds that almost the entire carrion bunch, except for Tex Hex and a few dingoes, are in the lair. The heroes break in anyway, thanks to Sarah Jane, while Paco uses his Neutra laser to rescue his daughter and capture Sandstorm. At the end, Michelle realizes that her father is a hero with or without a weapon.
Sarah Jane had a say in all this.
Shake hands with Long Arm John. Molly and her Stratacoach get attacked by Ryder and the Dune Buggy Gang, Mayor Derringer and newcomer Long Arm. John are inside the coach, and Long Arm protects the mayor from the attack. BraveStarr and 3030 do the rest, while Fuzz's Prairie rocket falls apart. The heroes manage to catch Dingo Dan riding one of the Dune buggies, but the other 2 escape. The gang could be straight out of a Mad Max movie, but then all the characters in the series look like they are out of a Western studio. Anyway, Mayor Derringer is mighty impressed with Long Arm John, and since the newcomer is looking for a job, Derringer asks BraveStarr to make Long Arm John a deputy. Although Fuzz gets a little apprehensive, BraveStarr obliges and asks Fuzz to keep Dingo Dan locked up and release the other man, who is sleeping in the cell. BraveStarr takes Long Arm John and 3030 to find Ryder and his mate. As you can guess, Dingo Dan shape-shifts to his human face and tricks Fuzz into letting him go. Fuzz realizes what he has done, only too late, as Dingo Dan rides his buggy and starts robbing Kirium and attacking the bank. Mayor Derringer gets mad at Fuzz and fires him from his post, but also continues to pester Fuzz to do something about Dingo Dan. Meanwhile, BraveStarr and company chase after Ryder and slither through the desert, as Long Arm John's long mechanical arm comes quite handy. A Long Arm John toy was announced, but was cancelled with several others. However, surprise, surprise, it's just a balloon that looks like Ryder, and the real outlaw is on his way to Fort Kirium for a robbing spree. In the city, Fuzz sulks while sitting at the trading post and falls into a hole on the floor due to a loose board. This gives him an idea, and he lures Dingo Dan inside for a shot of Sweetwater. Fuzz tricks Dingo Dan into falling and getting stuck inside the loose board. The rest of the Dune Buggy Gang appears, but so does Long Arm John, 3030 and BraveStarr. As Long Arm's arm gets stuck in the Dune Buggy, Fuzz helps him, and the criminals are caught. Mayor Derringer realizes the error in his ways, while Fuzz is tasked to find Long Arm John a job.
My strength! My bear strength! It's gone!
Strength of the Bear. We have now reached the final episode of the series, and although it doesn't conclude the story, it sheds light on one of the most important aspects and answers a critical question. Where does BraveStarr get his powers? So at the beginning, while trying to save a miner from being buried under rocks, BraveStarr calls on the strength of the bear and finds that it's gone. Sarah Jane takes care of the matter, but has BraveStarr worried, who tries on the other animal spirit powers and finds that they are all gone. He visits the shaman for help, who discloses that BraveStarr must brave the wilderness to renew his bond with the animal spirits. But for these, he must make a journey alone and without weapons. On the other hand, the news reaches Stampede and the Carrion Bunch, led by Sandstorm. It's quite unfortunate that Tex Hex doesn't make any prominent appearance in the last few episodes, let alone this one. As BraveStarr starts his journey, the villains start keeping an eye on him. Vipra stings BraveStarr, making him drowsy, and Stampede sends BraveStarr to Badlands. There, BraveStarr encounters another old and blind Native American called Ursian. He helps BraveStarr with water and takes him to find food, but the Carrion Bunch attacks. Meanwhile, 3030 worries about his partner, and Shaman asks him not to interfere. However, when it comes to friends, it's difficult to sit by and watch. 3030 decides to find and help BraveStarr, Judge JB, Deputy Fuzz and Handlebar further join him. In this episode, Deputy Fuzz is voiced by Susan Blue and not Charlie Adler. Back at Badlands, BraveStarr promises to help out Ursian from the godforsaken place. BraveStarr lures out the villains and asks them to let Ursian go, but Sandstorm refuses. BraveStarr gets tied up in a rope, and Ursian gets his feet stuck in the ground. At this moment, BraveStarr's friends arrive, but BraveStarr asks them not to interfere. However, when Sandstorm tries to kill Ursian, BraveStarr is able to summon the strength of the bear to save him. BraveStarr gets back all his powers, and Ursian reveals himself as the spirit of animals. He leaves after being satisfied with the marshal, while BraveStarr's friend takes care of the rest of the gang. Marvelous verdict. To sum up, BraveStarr serves the vibe of a classic 90s series, although it was released in the late 80s. Moral lessons accompany every episode, and the stories are surely engaging for kids, but let's face it, it's not going to make you dewy-eyed or cling to your seat. On the good side, it gave us some eccentric villains, and the cigar-smoking outlaw Scuzz is a personal favourite. We enjoyed the Western theme, but the same can't be said for Prairie people. Overall, the series has a mixed bag of qualities, but as usual, we would love your take on this. If you enjoyed the video, do consider hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel for more of this cartoon goodness.